Failure, but we're back. Okay, there we go. Ew, do I look fat? Gross. Wait, this is what it is. This is too high, sorry. I feel like there's like so much extra space when I just like, cause you know, I can see myself there. That's more proportional. I was like down here. Sorry, I had to take a shower. I just ran 10 miles. I'm so much more prepared. And now we can talk about mental health and I'll probably cry again, but I did regulate my emotions. I'm mentally prepared for whatever's about to happen here. Let me make sure I tell Danny. So I am live now. I'm super excited. And I'm on regular, like I'm doing this live on my phone. I just did a tutorial so I could figure out how to do like the boxes. That way we can have Dr. Danny on like a good size screen and not, you know, because that's the bad thing about TikTok Studio. You can't have people in boxes right next to each other. And it's just the worst. That's the one thing I really can't. They have to do something about that or it's just not worth it. Keep tapping the screen, tap, tap, tap. What am I think I have a gift goal set. Now, hold on. This is a good time for me to learn how to change I don't even know how to update gift goals from inside of live on my phone. I wish you could still control lives on TikTok Studio and be live on your phone. That would be nice. And then you could update your gift goals from the software. See. Okay, I'm just gonna see if I can, which is probably, oh my god, wait, nope. I was so hopeful for 1 second, but I don't think so. In fact, how do you update your gift goals you probably don't even do that at all. I don't know. I'll figure it out. If you would like to subscribe, the bottom star in the yellow corner of the screen is for subscriptions. Tap the screen. Please gift the guests. We're just waiting. Dr. Danny should be here any second. She was just chugging some caffeine like me. Fax, how are you feeling, by the way? I was worried about you.
Well, that's very kind of you to ask. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. I'm not doing great, to be perfectly honest. I appreciate you asking. You know, I just did a video on that, as a matter of fact, about how it's okay to not be okay, but it's a new day. The sun's shining.
Oh, I know. And I told everyone, I'm sorry if you were inundated by that. I was like, Fax, I don't know if Fax is okay. Which is kind of worse, but I probably shouldn't have told everyone to contact you. But I was like, everyone.
No, I really appreciate that. And I wanted to say that actually, because I got so many people said such kind things to me. Like I usually get, you know, unaliving threats in my DMs. not today.
Isn't it nice when it's not just people telling you that you should be raped or unalived?
Yeah, it's pretty nice, actually.
If you're just joining us, we're going to be doing we have a doctor coming, literally, who's going, don't worry. If you've never had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Danny, her actual TikTok name is @InBedWithDanielle. She's a doctor that tours all over and is paid a lot of money to speak on all sorts of topics. She runs research groups. You know, she was one of the people whose research grants were lost, you know, by the trigger words. Like, God forbid you focus on medical research around women, and then you are defunded. But she will be joining us, and we'll see how this goes today. But it's so interesting because you know Dr. Danny. Thanks, Chris. Thank you so much. Nice to see you. If you know Dr. Danny, she's amazing, and she's been saying like, Felice, we need to talk. And I never avoid people. Like, she's my favorite person on earth. But I was just like, I'm afraid if I get on the phone with you, I'm going to start crying, force you to give me a free therapy session. I don't know if anyone's ever had a friend who's like a doctor, but it's like, I want to be a supportive friend and not someone that's like using my friend for free medical.
It's like you don't have to own a boat. You have to have a friend who owns a boat. Same kind of thing.
And I'm like, sometimes I'm always checking myself, like, am I being a supportive friend to Danny, or
you
just
are.
like calling her crying? No, I know she's the greatest person, and she will be here shortly. She had actually a pretty clear schedule today, so. And I think what we'll be focusing on, I was joking around, but I think on YouTube. Oh, I need to make sure I'm live on. That reminds me. Sorry, YouTube. I'll be there 1 second. I knew I was forgetting something. I am live on Twitch. Oh, and Kraken, thank you for resubscribing on Twitch. I saw that yesterday and didn't say anything. Thank you so much. Matt, by the way, I talked to Matt. Matt is in Iowa. I don't know if he's filming it today. He's going to be interviewing Pete Buttigieg today from Iowa. So awesome. I don't know if it's a pre-recorded thing or it's going to be live. I'm not sure, but he was telling me about it last night. So proud of Matt. Can't wait to ride his coattails to the top. Truly.
Yeah, I texted him as well. He seems like he's fanboying a little bit, but that's okay. He can. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
Oh my gosh. Is that, Liam, are you a Trump supporter? Is that why you're requesting? Not today. Today's not Yell at Felice Day. That will happen soon. The next time I'm live.
I'll be right back. My dog stole my shoe.
Cool.
Be right back.
Yeah. I thought Danny was requesting, but it was a man named Liam. Yeah, I think no, I know. I'm pretty sure I met Liam once. Liam, wrong live, but soon. I'll be live soon again and you can scream at me or, say horrible things or whatever it is you desire to do. This is just before Danny gets here, let's get to 50K. Everyone tap the screen. And when Danny does get here, if you've never had the pleasure of meeting her, I will just say, she is the smartest person on TikTok, quite literally.
She's great.
She's amazing.
I think we did meet one time, actually, in your space, I believe, briefly.
Oh yeah, I forget. I feel like you are, to me, the two most important people in my life are finally going to meet. This is even better than I imagined. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. And by the way, did you really ask the question? Do you look fat? Are you kidding me? Did you really ask that question of yourself? You did.
Yeah. Listen, you don't ever think you have a distorted body image? Maybe we can have Danny talk to us about that. Oh my God. Speaking of that, can I just give everyone, I don't know if anyone remembers, if you aren't monitoring the manosphere, Danny has research teams that track the manosphere. I am always keeping an eye on them and X. If you remember, around 2022, there was this guy who was getting hundreds of millions of views on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram called Liver King. Does anyone remember this guy?
Oh my gosh.
It was very clearly on a cocktail of steroids you can only afford if you have, say, $20,000 a month. And even Joe Rogan was like, you are on steroids. And he was like, no, it's just because I eat raw animal livers. And he would make videos where he would make his family open up cows and crawl inside them while eating livers. Well, there's a documentary on YouTube about him where basically, because if you don't remember how this ended was he was exposed. He had emails, from his doctor about his $11,000 a month steroid habit. It's called, I think, The Liver King Untold or something. It came out on Netflix today. It will change your life.
Oh man.
So disturbing. Danny, I'm so glad you're here and I can't express to you without being creepy how much I've missed you. So I won't. I'll save that for our private call.
Every once in a while, we get super busy and so we just keep missing each other and then we get slightly less busy or we end up connecting and we're like, I miss you so fucking much.
And Danny was straight hair. How long did that take you? I've never. Danny has very curly hair.
I do. So it is freshly washed. Thank you so much. I spent the weekend deep sea diving because I dive as a hobby. So it was full.
Oh, and you're a scuba diver, and she's an industrial commercial diver. What does Daniel not do?
We tried to dive a couple wrecks, a couple World War II shipwrecks this weekend, and the waves were just absolutely insane. So we just, coast dive, but it's freshly washed and I had to blow dry it from absolutely soaking wet and then run a straightener over it. So it took way too long.
I can't even, you look amazing as always. And I think I was titling this how I titled it on YouTube and Twitch is just preserving your sanity during a fascist takeover. I think, you've seen how I've been so sick lately. I feel exhausted. I feel stressed out. I feel anxious. When I told everyone in the Discord this morning that you were going to join the live, people were so excited. It was just interesting, how people are expressing, yeah, I don't feel okay. And I need some strategies to be able to manage that. And not to place it all on you, because it's also okay for you not to be okay. So if you would like to have a breakdown on this live, you also are allowed.
That's okay. I'm definitely not okay. However, I do feel very privileged that I get to like leave the country often and like work in other places. And then I kind of get like a dose of sanity because Europe is with us still, like for the most part, right? And like you go there and people are like, are you okay? Because it doesn't look okay over there. And you're like, no, nobody's okay. We are not okay. We're definitely not okay. So Felice and I were just talking about like how it's really difficult. And there's slowly being recognized this idea of like political trauma that like, and we've seen this, right? Like we've seen people live through like political strife and stuff like that. We've seen people live through like persecution. We had refugees, we had asylum seekers. So this idea of like political trauma and trauma being imparted by your government. And something that's like really big over in Europe is this idea that a country exists to take care of its people. In America, a country exists to like make money and make people money, right? But like over there, a country exists to take care of their people. So they have things like parental leave. They have things like free healthcare and stuff like that. And they look at the US and they're like, so like, what does your country do for you? And we're like, nothing. They just give money to like oligarchs, I guess. So political trauma is something that we're kind of starting to look at. And I think this is sort of the first time that we're seeing it in the US, or at least the first time that we're kind of seeing it like to this level, right? And I think it's worth noting that we're seeing a lot of people experiencing symptoms that are really either they have PTSD and those symptoms are triggered, or they are developing symptoms that are PTSD like symptoms from like kind of living through this time. And things like checking the news obsessively, like that can link to hypervigilance in PTSD, right? Like if I'm really hypervigilant and if I just get all the information and if I know, then maybe if I know, I can protect myself, right? And that can be linked to like hypervigilance and PTSD. People are experiencing a lot of anxiety and depression, and like Felice, you can share as much as you want to share, but like we're seeing people have these sort of an existential crisis, right? And like existential crises come about when people think their life is in danger, but it doesn't have to literally be your life. It can just be your life as you know it being in danger, right? Like the life as I know it is about to be over, or my rights as I know it are about to be over. The life that I've lived, these rights that I have taken for granted, right? We're seeing a lot of like push to have women have more babies. And there's this push to, they're going to end some childcare tax credits and end assistance for childcare and stuff like that. And they're saying that's to put more parents back in the home. That's not to put more parents back in the home. That's to put women back in the home. That's just Republican messaging trying to like make it look fluffy and nice, right? But we see what that is. And so a lot of like AFAB people are looking at this going, what is my life going to look like in a year? Well, like, are ABs even going to be available? Is birth control going to be available? Is contraceptives going to be available? And we don't know. And we have all lived a life where that stuff has been available to us always, right?
Okay, sorry, I did not mean to do that. I was just going to put a background up and couldn't figure out. Sorry, I did not mean to change the scene. No, I could not agree more. And I think you're explaining it beautifully. Like, I think that, and like, I think we talked about, I've been diagnosed with PTSD and CPTSD. And I think for me, I definitely, like you said, like I have a theory, and that's why I do the people's receipts for people that feel comforted by information, right? Knowledge is power. If I understand what I'm facing, I'll be able to tackle it better. I think I'm definitely one of those people, but then it becomes exactly like you're saying, like hypervigilance. It doesn't shut off. Like it's impossible to ingest a 24-hour news cycle. I mean, it's exhausting. It will take the best of you and make you into a crazy person. So I do think it is about balance in a way. And like, how do you achieve balance with you when you're feeling what I describe as, and I talk to my therapist twice a week, like about loss of control. I feel like that's what it boils down to. Like I'm feeling like a catastrophic loss of control.
And like what triggers PTSD for people a lot? Feeling like you don't have control. Because control, even if it's just, we often don't have as much control as we think we do, right? We often have this sort of illusion of control, even in the best circumstances. We can't control other people. We can't control other people's reactions, right? But like we try. And not having control, this feeling of helplessness and hopelessness can really trigger PTSD. It can also trigger depression and anxiety. Also, a lot of what I'm seeing from people is like grief. There's a lot of grief. Like there's a lot of people that wanted to have kids in the next 4 years. And now they're looking at the US and going, there's absolutely no way I'm bringing a child into this. There's people that wanted to start their own business. They wanted to start a small business. And now that's not looking good. Like to be able to start a small business, right? They're not going to get certain tax breaks and things like that. And they don't have the money or the income. There's supply chain issues. There's a lot of people that had hopes and dreams going forward for the next 4 years that now they're looking at these hopes and dreams and they're like, I don't think that I can do this. And somebody in the comments said, like, I'm still grieving over COVID. Yeah. Like people are still living in this space where they're like, what is time? Like 2020 to 2025 feels like a year while simultaneously feeling like 10 years. So there's still a lot of that like recalibration kind of going on. And now we're living in this like existential dread of like what's coming next and how is it going to significantly impact my life? Because a lot of what's happening is significantly impacting people.
First, Danny, it's a pleasure to be on this panel with you. We messaged a while back and never really got a chance to connect, so I'm really honored to be here. I love what you do, so thank you so much and Felice for letting me.
Sorry, I didn't do an official introduction. Steve is the safest
We're adults.
person I've ever met and a real warrior, and you know, a defender of women. So I appreciate it, Steve. Thank you, and you two are my literal two favorite people I've met on TikTok, and now we're all together. This is like my dream. Something you said, Danny, and can I call you I want to call you Dr. Danny. Should I call you Dr. Danny? Should I just it's an alliteration that I love.
Yeah,
okay, gotcha. All right, fair enough.
Love an alliteration.
Yeah, we know that. I was thinking of when you were describing hypervigilance and you were describing this overconsumption, I was immediately looking at our dear friend Felice because of not only the work that she does, and I think it's interesting because we, as political content creators, especially people who go live every day with the intent to keep the people who follow us and trust us informed. I take that as a responsibility. And I just did a video on this like an hour ago about how I advocate for men's mental health every single day. And I use the analogy like the cobbler's children who has no shoes. The people who advocate for mental health, I've not been paying attention to mine. And that's impactful, right? And I think if we're all trying to navigate through this, because yes, by design, fascism, the muzzle velocity of misinformation and disinformation and chaos is overwhelming. In an attempt to try to keep the people who rely on us informed, it's overwhelming us as well. And, I've got broadcasting and media and journalistic experience, so I feel comfortable in those spaces, but it is freaking overwhelming. It is overwhelming. It's like every day it's FOMO. Every single day. Are we getting a $400 million luxury airliner? Are we getting gold meme coins? Are we getting shoes? I mean, I feel a sense of responsibility, but at the same time, I've got to take a step back.
I think that taking a step back can also be really hard for a lot of people. And like, I know a lot of people in the comments are sort of like the advocates of their family and the advocates of their friend group and stuff. And there can be like this responsibility of like, if I step back, then what? And also, if we don't step back and take care of ourselves, how can we continue to do this work? Because it's hard on us as well, right? And I was just talking to a couple of friends. A lot of my colleagues are also SEX therapists and do this same work and stuff. And a lot of us treat, like I'm queer, genderqueer, living in the South. We treat a lot of queer and trans people. And like, it is hard to be a therapist right now because we're there, like for our clients and our patients, we're there, we show up for them, right? We do a lot of work with them. And it's a privileged space to be in that they let me be in that. It's a privileged space to be in that they let me be in that. It's a privileged space to be in that they let me be in that. It's a privileged space to be in that they let me be in that. It's a privileged space to be in that they let me be in that. It's a privileged space to be in that they let me be in that. That fear of like, I don't know if everything is going to be okay is now a realistic fear, right? Like, whereas before you might have been dealing with like anxiety and some trauma stuff where it's like, it doesn't feel okay, but it is okay. Or it feels the same, but it's not the same. you can't say that anymore. Like there's real danger on the horizon. And so you have to recognize and validate that, like, yeah, there's real danger on the horizon. While a lot of people, and I'm sure a lot of people in the comments, are getting gaslit by their family members or something, being like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Nothing's a big deal. Like, it's not a huge issue. Like, yeah, some of this stuff is happening and maybe I don't agree with some of this, but like, it's not a big deal.
Hmm.
People feel
What is some
gaslit.
advice you give, Danny, to your client, the people that see you as in the capacity of a therapist when they are talking about exactly what you're describing? Because I think that's a real issue of being gaslit, right? When you are concerned and you're feeling like things aren't okay, I'm seeing all these things, I factually know this is happening, but your family around you is essentially telling you, stop lying, stop making things up. Everything's fine. None of this is actually a problem.
I just because we always get this comment, it is my dog snoring. So someone's going to be like, what is that snoring in the background? It is my 230-pound dog that snores like a grown man. So I often tell people that, like, self-care is also knowing when to walk away, knowing what conversations are worthy for you to engage in, and knowing what conversations are a waste of your breath and your time. You don't have to have every conversation. And that is a skill that I am also not good at, right? Because like I know so much and you constantly want to be an advocate and you don't want to let stuff go, right? But that is self-care as well, because we all know, and I'm like, people can validate this for me or you're going to think I'm crazy, but sometimes you engage in these and like you get activated, right? Like your trauma gets activated or your anxiety, and you can feel yourself amping up, right? And I always tell people, like, pay attention and notice where that starts to happen in your body. Your body will start to physiologically respond before your brain does. And that's a shortcut that your body uses to teach you that there's danger there quickly, right? Because your conscious brain, that takes a while to get that information forward. So mine always comes up like right in the center of my chest. Like that's where I start to like feel my anxiety. And as soon as I start feeling that, like as soon as I start feeling activated, that's a clue that my body is telling me to disengage. Maybe not forever, but for now. Even if that's like I need to go to the bathroom, and you walk away to the bathroom, and like if you can clear that stress response, truly be honest with yourself, like sure, go back and engage in that, right? But like you will not fully engage in that conversation it to the best of your ability, depending on how activated you can get a certain level of activated, right? And still function. And it's a skill to know where that is, right? For you. But once you get activated to a certain level, just like once, I struggle even calling it, because once people with oppressive mindsets get activated, I can't even call it conservative anymore because it's not conservative. It's just an oppressive mindset. Let's just call it what it is.
I like that.
I do
Right?
too.
Like conservatism is what my dad had when I was like 13 years old, right? That is not what is going on right now. So once they get activated to a certain level, they can't engage in good logical conversation. Neither can you. And it's not to say remove the emotion, because that's fake. Logic and emotion do not exist separately. Logic exists when you can integrate your emotion with your conscious thought and let that process through, right? But you do not have thoughts without emotions. They are not like two separate things. We can see this on like fMRI scanners in your brain, right? So if you can feel yourself getting activated to a certain level, disengage. You can always come back to that conversation later, but you might I also do not have conversations with certain people. Like my sister and I both have doctorate degrees. We are the most educated people in our family. When it comes to my family, I dead ass look at my family and I'm like, I'm sorry, what's your highest level of education? Oh, right. You don't even have a college degree. I'm sorry. I'm not engaging in a conversation with you unless you pay me. Pay me for my time, because people pay me to have these conversations and give this education. And you are telling me that you are so low on the education on this topic that I'm going to spin my wheels spending a shit ton of time educating you. I don't do that shit for free. This brain costs me a lot of money. I'm not giving that away for free. Now, will I necessarily say that to somebody that I don't know? I mean, I'm unlikely to engage in a conversation with someone that I don't know, because again, you are not worth my time and you are not worth me getting activated, right? Like if I'm not going to engage in somebody at the gym in a political conversation. I don't know you. I don't give a shit about you. And I'm not going to change your mind. I'm going to invest my energy where it makes sense to invest my energy. I'm going to invest my energy in people willing to have a conversation. I'm going to invest my energy in people there's a lot of people sitting there right now going like, I don't really pay attention. Time to pay attention. Let's have a conversation. Those people are worth your time and energy because they're going to receive some of the information you have, and they might push back on you a little bit, but like they also might walk away and think about it. And that's all I'm asking for. I just want you to think about it, right? Like that's the first step. But some people aren't going to think about it. They just want to amp you up. They just want to troll you. They have no interest in learning. I'm not going to waste my time on those people. And I'm not going to let myself get activated because that hurts me. That's self-care, right? That's taking care of myself, not allowing people that are not worth my time and energy to activate me and get me to that worked up, amped up state.
Do you think there's people on the left perpetuating some of that, though, Danny? Meaning that people that are, especially in this space, triggering backgrounds, rage baiting in an attempt to have these conversations, knowing that they may not necessarily be in good faith?
Do I think people on the left do that? Is that what you're at?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I do. And also, let's remember that, like, when we're talking about the age of social media, like catchphrases at the beginning, you're trying to catch people within those first 3 minutes to watch your video. So you see so many, like, I won't call out anybody in specific, but you see so many people that will be like, breaking news, this is brand new. Like, everything's breaking news if it comes out first. But that's meant to catch somebody, right? And so you also have to get kind of good at like deciphering, like, some people withhold certain information about stuff because it makes it sound spicier, right? Whereas if I gave you the whole information, it doesn't sound as like activating. So if we can get an emotional response from somebody, you can get engagement. And so sometimes we are trying to like prime people into those emotional responses for sure to activate engagement and get followers or whatever, right? So I do think that it happens. It's one of those things where like, yeah, I think people can be guilty on it on either side.
It gets dangerous. I mean, Felice and I have had many conversations about this. I know she has shifted her platform about this. I know she has shifted her platform about this. I know she has shifted her platform about this. I know she has shifted her platform about this. I know she has shifted her platform about this. I know she has shifted her platform. And then most of my friends are not conservatives or oppressors, as you said it. I like that better. So I feel privileged in that regard, but I know many other
what
people.
Scientology, what do they call them in Scientology? Oppressive persons or like OPs?
I love that.
Or is it suppressive person? It's one or the other.
Either, I suppose, but it creates this this challenge, as we discussed earlier, because there are so many violations of people's rights that are happening every single day. We kind of have to pay a bit more attention, but to suppressive persons, thank you, Erica. We have to pay a bit more attention, but to what end, right? To what end? I'm not there yet extending a hand for the people that are blatantly violating human rights. I'm just not there. Some people are. I'm not.
I think that's fair. I just want to, because I want to be as open as possible. First of all, can we gift Fax and Danny for being here? I think this is a special live. Hopefully at the end, if anyone has any questions or wants to share, we will save space for that as well. So be thinking about that. If there's something you want to share or a question you have, hopefully we'll save some time at the end for that as well. Also tap the screen. Let's get to 100K and share the live as much as possible. That way, if anyone also is needing to hear this, they can. I find, like, I talk about this all the time. In one sense, I was built for this, right? I was raised by a malignant narcissist, like who, and through my own constant reading of thousands of psychological papers, I've realized it's interesting, especially with women. I was raised by a female malignant narcissist, which was interesting because when, the latest research on narcissistic personality disorder is that it's like a river, right? Like at certain points, it could be level 5 rapids and rushing and as malignant as possible. And then to survive, it can become this like calm, babbling brook. So, and I didn't understand until I really dug into the research that my mother, when, she was the most sadistic was when she had very small children that she could overpower and be sadistic to. And as we got bigger and grew up, that stopped. But I understand, because of those lessons I learned and what I survived, I understand what it takes to survive a malignant narcissist, which I believe is helpful. But it's also as if I'm being re-traumatized. And I think that's what maybe it would be helpful for people to recognize is when you feel constantly, like you're saying, like activated, or this is bringing up all these feelings for you. I think a lot of us grew up in these authoritarian households where there was the authoritarian sort of abuser. I always talk about my freshman year, I got a Division I athletic scholarship to play volleyball. We all had to take these extensive psychological tests, like football, all the fall sports, like football, soccer, volleyball. We all took them together and we were all together in a room. They're like, only one person responds to negative reinforcement. They're like, my coach was like, I'm sorry, do you want me to abuse you? I was like, yeah, I guess that was how I had tested. So I do understand Trump, but I also do feel as also like, if you are feeling constantly triggered or activated, exactly what you were saying, like you're almost in fight or flight, I think it's important to recognize that we are being re-traumatized. It's our childhoods coming up. You're recognizing something that happened on a smaller scale, happening on a larger scale.
Yeah, I think something that's really interesting is that I'm seeing a lot of people, and so I had to point this out to people, like a lot of my clients and stuff that I saw, right? And I'm this way too. I'm like, I cannot listen to that man fucking talk. I can't fucking, like, I'll listen to stuff on mute and read the captions, but I'm like, I can't listen to his fucking voice. There are a lot of people that grew up in authoritarian households, grew up in religion, grew up with parents that were either they were true narcissists, right? Or they had narcissistic type behaviors, particularly when they got called out. There's gaslighting, right? Like Trump is very good at gaslighting. There's unpredictability. Like one of the things that people say often is like, you never know what the hell's going to come out of his mouth, right? And sometimes it's the truth and sometimes it's a lie. And sometimes people believe that lie and it's just like, whatever. He uses a lot of public humiliation, right? As soon as somebody doesn't say something he likes, he's degrading them. He's putting them down. Lots of negative reinforcement. There's a lot of people that are like bowing down to him because they don't want to be publicly humiliated. He's really quick to use things like misogyny to like publicly shame people. That's another thing, right? Not working off of guilt. Guilt is externally focused. Guilt is, I did a bad thing. Shame is, you are a bad thing, right? These are two totally different things. If you had parents that parented out of shame instead of out of guilt, that can produce a lot of PTSD for some people, depending on what it is, right? So, also this like forced loyalty, right? This idea that like you have to be loyal no matter what. And if you're not, like, be loyal to me no matter what happens. Like that's what nationalism, right? People watch this and a lot of people are like, I can't hear them. And when you do work in therapy, I had a lot, you sit there and you're like, what does this remind you of? Where do you feel this in your body? Where have you experienced this before? And people will go back and they'll be like, God, it just reminds me so much of my parent, right? Like insert parent here. Because the way that Trump leads is the way an abusive parent leads. And when people listen to him talk on TV, they're being triggered in the same way that they were triggered in their family of origin, because he's a narcissistic abuser, right? And he uses a lot of these tactics of like shame, blame, deflecting. If your parents did a lot of that growing up and you grew up in a household that was strict, authoritarian like that, you might be very triggered every time you hear him talk or when you hear him talk in a specific way. And so people kind of are like, why do I feel this way? Like, why does it make me feel so activated just to hear him talk? a lot of times it's re-triggering that childhood trauma.
I could not agree more. And like you said, and I think she touched on Dr. Danny touched on something so important. Like, recognize the difference. When you are often raised in an abusive, thank you for oh my gosh, don't get me started on octopi. There's a new Prime documentary on Amazon about how octopuses are as smart as we are. Danny, I almost texted you about it. You are going to love it. You love dinosaurs. They're the dinosaurs of the sea. They're amazing. Anyways, they're smarter than we are. Anyways, but what I was saying is just recognize that, right? And understand how Trump is using those authoritarian methods. Authoritarian methods. Authoritarian methods. Authoritarian methods. Authoritarian methods. Authoritarian methods. To rule through fear, right? If you don't toe the party line, if you don't say what I want you to say, I am going to instill shame in you.
And shame is a big, it's a way to change behavior, but not in a positive way, right? Shame will affect people. There's a reason that people parent through shame, because it does work. But what it does is it creates disconnection between you and the child. It creates your child's lack of ability to regulate, and it creates your child that links their production to who they are and their worth as a person, right? So then when they fail, right? Like, even just in a small way, which I don't really necessarily believe that there's anything like failing. I think that there's learning and growing, and there's hit the success mark that you want. But as long as you're learning something, you're not failing, right? But if you believe that, or you were taught that, or you were taught that you were a failure, or you were taught that like nothing you ever did was ever good enough, people that were parented in shame often have these deep internal narratives of I'm not lovable or I'm not good enough, or both, right? Because I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable. And that came from love being conditional in your family. Well, love is conditional in a Trump regime as well, right? Like, so these people often get activated when they're hearing him talk. And like I tell people, just take a pause and recognize what's going on in your body. Are you in fight? Are you in flight? Are you in freeze? Are you in fawn? Which one of these are you in? Is that the same as when you were a child? Because that's always really interesting too. A lot of what I find, particularly in AFAB people, though it can exist like all across the board, right? If
That's
you grew up in a
assigned
household-
female at birth. Sorry, I think sometimes.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, assigned female at birth.
If you were assigned female at birth, you were raised and socialized as a girl, right? A lot of times you were not allowed to fight in your family. And again, this can occur for absolutely anybody, right? But you weren't allowed to fight because fighting was too dangerous in one way or another, right? It either brought about physical pain or it brought about emotional pain. So as a child, you either froze, you were just like, yep, gonna take it. If I just shut up, this is the easiest way out of it. Or if I just say, yep, you're right, mom. Yep, you're right, dad. Absolutely. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You eventually learn that that's how you got through the trauma, or that's how you got through the emotional like discourse that was happening. Or you froze. You shut down, right? You internally shut down. If anyone was a really good reader as a kid, a lot of people dissociated into reading, right? If you're like,
go anywhere you want with a book.
I had a lot of people that dissociated into reading and stuff, right? However, if you couldn't fight in your family of origin, you might be fighting now, right? You might come out fighting and you might have a fight response. And particularly when you're having political discussions, right? I can get into a fight response, especially with my family members, because I'm like, oh, fuck you, we're coming in hot, right? And I can reactivate into a fight response. Well, it wasn't safe to fight in my family then, but I'm fucking safe now, right? Like, not only am I educated, but like, what are you going to do to me? I'm a full grown adult. So I'll come out fighting. And a lot of people are like, I don't understand why I do this. I wasn't like this as a child. Well, you couldn't do it as a child, but now your body's going, oh, we're going to fucking fight now. I got this shit, right? It's kind of a rebound effect.
You said something that oh, sorry, please.
That's it. I'm glad. I want you to talk facts.
The shame component, Danny. I think it's acceptance. You're going to be shamed into acceptance. You're going to be shamed into leaving. Meaning, like, we have these conversations all the time when people are presented with facts and how difficult it is to try to convince someone. I've always felt that if they're convinced of one thing that they've been led to believe is wrong, then that blows the entire, the bubbles burst. Rules of Fight Club, same like rules of the cult. You can't say negative things about the cult. You can't say negative things about the indoctrination. I see that with men, obviously, more than I see it with women. I'm sure you would both agree with that. So how do we help? How do we help those of us who are seeing our friends and our family unwilling to accept, we'll call it reality, because maybe they feel like they're going to be shamed? It makes sense what I'm saying. Like I'm trying to unpack, the reason why someone, even though they're presented with overwhelming evidence to refute their claims, it's irrelevant, because if they admit it, then there's a bigger problem, right? Their world crashes around them, so to speak.
So research, I'm going to lean on the research a little bit here, because the research tells us, and this is so frustrating, and Felice and I have kind of talked about this a little bit, where it's like, you have the facts, you've done the research, you've read, like, nobody knows what a primary source is anymore, I swear. But like, you've gone back and I know they're like, no, I read this news article, and you're like, that's not a primary source.
Don't even get me started.
Like, you've gone.
The Truth Social said.
Or I read this on someone's Twitter, but it had like a news article linked to it, and the news article said it, and you're like, that's still not a primary source. So you've gone back and you've read the primary sources. Maybe you've read the bill. Maybe you've read the executive order, whatever, right? Like, you know what you're talking about. You know what you're talking about. And again, especially if you weren't heard as a child, if you grew up in a household that did not hear you, that refused to hear you, like Felice and I discussed, we both have CPTSD. A lot of mine comes from going through a traumatic experience as a child and nobody hearing me or listening to me, right? Like being gaslit, being like, shut up, you're the problem, right? So if you weren't heard as a child, or you grew up in your family and your emotions were not attuned to and you were not heard, but as an adult now, you're like, I know I'm fucking right. I know it. I know I'm right. I have all the data, and you can't argue with data, right? So like, let me present all this data to this person, and they're still not, that might trigger that trauma of like, I'm not being heard. I'm not being listened to again, right? And back then when you weren't heard and listened to, it brought you danger. It brought you pain, right? So I just want to recognize that that can be triggered for people, number one. And the other thing is, the research shows us that they don't care about data. You can give people all the studies in the world. You can put this for that, like, look, right here, it's in black and white. I can show you, right? I can show people as much as I want that immigrants were not taking over our voting. That we have done so many studies, we have looked at this, and we have found that actually, if it did happen, it is such a minute percentage that it did not affect voting at all, right? People don't care about the data. They care about how it makes them feel.
Right.
So what we find is that personal stories or pointing out personalized things gets people to shift more than the data, because the data feels so impersonal. And also, I'm going to say this with love. My dad is so conservative that we barely have a relationship at this point, right? And he knows that's why we don't have a relationship. However, when I I was home for my brother's wedding, right? And I was trying to engage with my dad about, it's before the election. He knew I was working on the Harris campaign. So I was trying to engage in this discussion with him, and I'm talking about maternal mortality. I'm talking about the data. I'm talking about this. I'm talking about this. And we're like in this heated, like I'm crying, right? And my dad, like, he loves me very much. He's like hugging me. He's like, I love you. I love you more than anything. Like, I'm so sorry that this is so painful for us. My dad's come a long way. That's partially me doing work for him, but it's been years. So he pulls me away and he's like, you've been smarter than me since you were 10 years old. And I know I've never told you that, but like literally you've probably been smarter than me since you were 10. Danielle, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, you say maternal mortality and like, you can give me all this data, but like, I don't know what the fuck that means. I don't know what any of that. And it was this moment that I was like, people don't know what you're talking about half the time, right? And I don't mean to say this to sound mean, but the number one predictor of how somebody will vote is education.
Yeah.
The number two predictor is gender, and those two things are becoming quickly intertwined because women are surpassing men in education in every single level now. So I think that if that continues, we're going to see those two things like kind of start going neck and neck.
Then how do you see that intertwining with violence towards women? Because I see it all as being connected to me personally, right?
Yeah, people who are more educated are less likely to perpetuate violence against women.
Right.
Right?
And because the gap gets wider, and the gap with education for women gets wider, men feel more threatened.
Yes. So it becomes this circle, right? This never ending circle. And then men start to feel like they're getting left out of education, even though education was literally made for them. Right. So there's all of this, like, it all adds to one another, right? It adds up. But I would say that you have to engage people on an emotional level. Remember, everything's projection. So they're like, oh, the Democrats make decisions based on emotion. It's actually based on data, and they're making decisions based on emotion because there is no immigrant invasion, but they feel like there is because their emotions have been triggered, and they're triggered into fear. The number one tool of the Republican Party is fear. If they can make you feel afraid of an enemy, so I'll speak specifically like to AB care, right? Because that's what I do. So giving people personalized stories. So my sister and I have both had to access reproductive health care to save our lives before, right? So bringing that up and being like, and often my sister is okay with this. I've talked about this many times. She's like, use my story. My sister has had 6 ABs. She has undergone a lot of IVF treatment. She has a lot of fertility issues. The most recent AB she had to have was at 22 weeks because the fetus became non-viable. And because of where she actually lives in Kansas where it is legal. But because they're fighting in Kansas to try to keep it illegal, nobody will keep it illegal. 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 Nobody will don't have a nurse anesthetist or an anesthesiologist there. So she has to undergo a second trimester AB with 0 anesthesia. She tells me, I felt every single scrape. I felt the dilation of my cervix. I felt all of the tools that were up inside of me. I felt the sharp, like all of this sharp. She's like, it was the most painful medical procedure I have ever had in my entire fucking life. And it only lasted 25 minutes. I thought I was going to die. It felt like they were ripping my insides out. That's horrible. That is a personal story though. And that is in a state where it is legal. And that's the hoops that somebody had to jump through. And then you can tell them personalized stories about the women that have unalived, right? In Texas. But like, don't just tell them that women have unalived. Don't just give them the data. I hate to say it, grab onto Nevaeh Crane. Because she was a beautiful, white, blonde-haired Christian woman.
Blue-eyed MAGA supporter.
MAGA supporter.
Right. Hardcore.
Voted for AB restrictions, right? And she is no longer with us at 18 years old.
Right.
Personalize these stories. That's what moves people, right? So that's just an example with AB care. But that is using the data, right? Because we know that regulating AB care causes these outcomes. We know that, but rather than giving them the data and the outcomes, give them a story that pings onto their emotions and that personalizes and humanizes it. Because what the Republican Party is doing is dehumanizing people that get ABs, dehumanizing immigrants, dehumanizing people of color, right? So if you can humanize it and grab onto emotions, that's what tends to shift people.
And that's what the Republican Party does really well, right? Like they cling on to, I hate saying her, I don't even like to say her name, but the woman her family asked Trump to stop using her, right? But
yeah.
statistically, and I always talk about this, I, as a woman who's very concerned with, thank you for all the hats, as a woman who's very concerned with being unalived, I know statistically I'm safest among undocumented immigrants. I'm less likely to be assaulted if I'm in a neighborhood of undocumented immigrants. But Fox News chooses these anecdotal stories so well, right? And skews and says, look, this is an infestation of undocumented immigrants and crime. When in fact, no, like I'm actually safer amongst undocumented immigrants, but they use these stories, isolated instances to drum up emotion in people. And I think, I don't know. I mean, when we debate, the number one thing I'm always hearing is now we're getting them all out of here. It's like, who? What?
Yeah, who?
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. Well, that's why it's interesting that you said that, Danny, because I don't know if I necessarily agree that tapping into the emotion is a way to move the needle, because I feel like the cruelty is the point, right? It feels to me that even if we try to find these emotional connections, that women are losing their lives, that children are starving, that, you know, that the elderly people are going to be kicked out of their homes, they've lost their retirement, it doesn't seem to matter. I mean, I'd love, as a hardcore empath, Felice knows this about me, like I'll be on my island alone with all the other empaths will all gather together. We won't get anything done, but we'll take care of each other. But I struggle with that component. Just I see people just leaning in on their cruelty and their harm. I'd like to believe what you said, that we can tap into emotions, but I just don't see it enough. Maybe I've become a bit more cynical.
No, it's really hard because the cruelty is the point, right? Like when we say that when we look at like these AB laws and stuff. However, generally that's like the politicians, and there are some people you are not going to move their needle, right? You're just not.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying is I don't engage with those people. I just don't engage with those people. But we're talking about what you're doing on a one-on-one level, talking to your family members, talking to other people that are in your circle, right? If we all engage the people in our circle and they're willing to, like, again, I have a couple, like, I have one of, I won't, if I call it out, they're going to know who I'm talking about. One of my family members will say, loves to troll, right? They just love, like, they'll just drop little bombs because they know it's going to upset me and set me off. I'm just not around that person. And I'm never going to engage with that person because I know the goal isn't to learn. I know the goal is to upset me. But if you have, I'm not going to teach someone that is not teachable. I'm not going to waste my time or my breath teaching someone that is not teachable. But if you have someone in front of you willing to have a discussion, right? And we're doing this on a personal level, because you're right. The cruelty is the point of this legislation, right? All of this legislation. But the data shows that if you're engaging with somebody one-on-one on a personal level, or if you have like a small group that you're lecturing to, if you just tell them, look, people are losing their homes, this, and this, people are losing their lives, they're like, yeah, whatever. But if you put a name on it and you give them an example, right? And you say like, no, this person or I, right? Like, so as I'm sitting there having this discussion with my dad, one of the things I asked him, he's like, the immigrants. And I'm like, how has that personally affected you in your life? Like, truly, I'm curious, right? And exploring with curiosity with people that want to engage in that conversation breaks down their defenses, because defensiveness will only be met with defensiveness, right? But if I'm engaging with curiosity and I'm like, tell me about that, Dad. Tell me how that has personally impacted you in your life. And he's like, sometimes you don't know. Sometimes it's impacting you. You don't know. And I'm like, okay, let's just say that that's true. Maybe it is impacting you and you don't know. 100% of your daughters, 100% have access reproductive health care that they would have died without. That is in your house right now. Because like we're home for my brother's wedding. All the kids are in the house, right? Like we're all there. So I'm like, you have a granddaughter upstairs sleeping right now that was born through IVF after your daughter had 4 ABs. And had she not been able to have those, you wouldn't have that granddaughter that you adore sleeping upstairs right now. 100% of your daughters have experienced this. That is in your house. That's not some immigrant, some boogeyman somewhere. That is 2 people that you claim you love more than any. That you claim you love more than any. That you claim you love more than any. that you claim you love more than anything or trying to engage in discussions, because that flicked him. Like that fucking got him right in the heart. And I know I went right to his heart. Like I know I dug deep and went right to his heart, but it was intentional.
It takes that sometimes, though. I mean, like you said, your dad was at least willing to have the conversation, and that goes back to the question I had earlier about how the family dynamic is so much more challenging because families are broken. Families may never recover. I mean, I'm glad yours at least is a point where you can at least have a conversation. We know many that don't speak at all, and that again, as an empath, that makes me sad. I get it, though. But people who believe in human rights and the prioritization of women's bodies and rights for marginalized communities, why should we relent on the truth? Why should we relent? Human rights politically is boring. Human rights on a bumper sticker, sadly, is boring. You know, it really is. 3-word phrases, stop the steal, lock her up, fuck Joe Biden. Those things resonate. Human rights for all, it's boring on a bumper sticker. But why should we ever relent on wanting to fight for it? And I think that's the part to me, that's one of the most divisive elements that we have now. Cruelty, prioritizing things that matter, education, healthcare, public health, women's rights to their body.
Can I tell you
And
my secret? I think, I just see this as and quite literally, this is how I see it as we're in a fight for our lives right now, right? I mean, truly, especially, the more melanin you have, the more you are next up to be disappeared. Someone in, and I won't say their name, but when I said we were going to do this live, they said, hey, I'm a Hispanic man. I'm getting anxiety, just being out walking around, the anxiety's building. I don't know what's going to happen if I'm going to be taken, and I see that. We are literally in a fight for our lives. And so I think the way I see it is I have a tool belt, right? Like Batman had his utility belt of all that stuff. And you just need to be prepared, right? Like that's why I love statistical analysis. I love math. I love data driven analysis. I love data, but also I am always if I have to appeal to people's emotions when debate, the next time I debate, watch me. I will make a man want to unalive me, that I'll start hitting them with statistical data. Whatever, what I'm saying? I see it as whatever you have in your tool belt, that's what you need to do. I want to make people angry. I want to make people want to cry. I want to make them feel as uncomfortable as possible and then start talking about data. That's how I see it. The things I had to do to survive against very smart adult a malignant narcissist as a child, all of those tools, that's what you have to deploy against people who are in cognitive dissonance, who are going to blindly support a fascist takeover. You need to make them feel something. They should feel embarrassed. They should feel ashamed. They should feel dumb. They should feel emotional. However many emotions I can invoke in someone, that's what I'm trying to do. I want them to feel it.
And just to be clear, this is how I engage with people. If you go over to my TikTok or you view any of my comments and stuff, this is how I engage with people online, right? You do not have to be kind to your oppressor. You do not have to be kind to people that are trying to take away your human rights. You do not owe them anything. They sure as shit don't owe you anything. So why should you be the bigger person, right? So when it comes to most of my content is very focused on ASAP health, women's health, AV care, stuff like that. So most of what I get is misogyny, right? I don't think I have gotten very much anti-Semitism or anti-LGBTQ stuff, right?
But you're not following Danny. Please follow her right now, by the way. She has a brilliant account with brilliant content that's often shadow banned because of what it's about.
Heavily shadow banned. So I do not engage. These people do not deserve my kindness. You have not earned any of that from me. I don't talk to any of my other family members on my mom's side or my dad's side, right? I don't talk to any of them because of political stuff. I talk to my dad because my dad has a willingness to hear me. My dad has a willingness to hear me out and engage in discussion. And that's why we have some semblance of a relationship, right? But I don't engage with any of my other family members they're cut off for that reason. I hadn't gone back home in about 5 years. I went back home for my brother's wedding and heavily debated whether or not to go home, right? So for these reasons, particularly because we were a couple months ahead of an election. But yeah, I will bury somebody with my brain online because I don't give a shit about you. And I don't think that I'm actually going to change your mind likely. If I do, I think that's great, right? I have facts, and if you're willing to hear them, I'm going to give them to you, right? Like I can bear, and that's one of my partners is always like, babe, you bury people with your brain and it's not the kindest thing. And like sometimes I'll do that to them if we're in an argument. I'm like, no, this and this and this and this. And they're like, you're burying me with your brain. Like I am your partner. You don't have to do that. Right. So engage in the discussions where people are willing to hear you and where it matters to you, where these people have earned some benefit of the doubt from you. People do not just get the benefit of the doubt, particularly when they're acting as an oppressor. However, my dad has shown a willingness to engage in these conversations. And even though it's painful for me at times, even though it's activating for me at times, because my dad is heavily linked to my trauma, we can talk about that and he knows that, right? But I will engage in those discussions with him. When it comes to men online, when it comes to homophobic people online, when it comes to transphobic people online, you get what you get. Like, I'm going to give you the facts and I'm going to tell you you're a piece of shit because I don't care. I don't have to be nice to you.
Can we talk about the manosphere for a moment? I know Felice and I did we did a live in this, and the red pilling, and I'm wondering from your perspective, Danny, about how many generations potentially of young men are going to be impacted by this.
I think we are fucked. So I do a lot of research on the manosphere. It's one of the things that we we follow. We look at trends. We look at what people are talking about. It's a really depressing thing to recognize, particularly if you have boys. But we know that even if you have a mom who gives you all of this feminist content, who tells you that women are people, blah, 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 adolescent boys are more likely to listen to their friends than they are to you. Even if if dad's on board, if dad is a feminist and dad supports equality, truly does, not in the way that they're just like silent or that in a way that they fall into heteronormative sort of relationships where they let the woman do a lot of the unrecognized labor, right? We're not talking about that because your boys see that too. Your boys see if mom is doing the bulk of the labor. Your boys see if mom is the default parent, if mom's the one that's responsible for the household chores and everyone else is just helping. We're not talking about those households. We're talking about households that truly make an effort every day to operate on an egalitarian level. Even in those households, dad has more of an influence on boys than girls, but peers have a lot of influence. And no matter how hard you try, these algorithms are owned by these tech oligarchs that the guy that did Facebook, y'all help me.
Zuckerberg,
Thank
gross,
you. Zuckerberg. How did Facebook get started? By rating his female classmates. At its core, that was a misogynist, social media thing. It was social media before social media was social media. But the reason that these things are getting big on these algorithms and the reason that they won't ban these manosphere content is because a lot of those men believe in that. And then we have men like Scott Galloway, who I'll probably get in trouble for calling out right now because a lot of people are like, oh, but I love him. He's a misogynist. I hate to tell it to you. I've been saying he's a misogynist for 3 years and people fought me on it. And now people are finally starting to see it. He adds credibility to that. Professor Scott Galloway, right? And then he says these things from this intellectual perspective. We have, coming from a lot of different areas, we have a lot of people adding legitimacy to these claims. And then we have people platforming these guys to have discussions. And they're like, well, I don't necessarily agree with them. You're pretending like this deserves a discussion in the first place. The idea that women shouldn't get a right to vote is not up for discussion or debate. You should bring that person on and be like, your ideas are fucking dumb and oppressive. You're an idiot. Women are people. They do not deserve a platform to discuss or debate this with you. This is not a debatable topic. So when we look at how many generations of boys, Gen Z, fully in the manosphere, fully engaged in the manosphere. We know that young boys as young as around 10 are getting engaged in the manosphere. They're on YouTube. They're absorbing this content, right? They're on TikTok. They're on Instagram, even though people are like, well, you can't have a account until you're 13.
I didn't know
Yeah,
Professor
okay.
Galloway was a misogynist. Thank you for warning me. Sorry for playing a clip of it. I mean, he was talking about economics, but yeah, he said something super disturbing at the end of the clip where he was like, "Yeah, I'm fine with a little corruption. Like, I think it's a good thing." And I was like, "What the?" Like, after you just explained all of that so eloquently, you're fine with it. Like, I mean, he's basically saying like he enjoys a little corruption, a little, like in politics. Like, I don't know how in any way that could ever be okay. Thank you for saying that, so I know.
So you have to, like, one of the really interesting things is when you study the manosphere, you start to see it everywhere. Because there's certain language and certain stuff that they say, like so we kind of recognize different areas of the manosphere, right? So there's men's rights activists or MRAs. There's incels, which, like, haven't we all heard of incels, right?
Yeah.
There's men, like the men going their own way. Those are the men who never seem to go their own fucking way.
Please
Like,
go your own
those,
way. We're waiting. Any
Bye.
day now.
thank you.
You're still here typing in my comments. I thought you were going your own way. It's the weirdest thing.
It's the worst. And then there's like this red pill content, right? So Scott Galloway perpetuates what we call the red pill content. And that's the idea of, like, if you've ever heard this thought that, what is it? 80% of women go after the top 20% of men, right? That's a bullshit statistic. Like, that statistic is just BS. We can get into that, why that statistic is BS if anyone really wants to. But, like, I'm sure people have heard about other people unpack this statistic and why it's wrong, right? Scott Galloway perpetuates that. He's like, he literally is on multiple podcasts going, these poor men in their loneliness epidemic. And the reason they're so lonely is because 80% of women will only go after the top 20% of men. And we can't tell women to lower their standards. But, and then he goes on to talk about how women need to lower their standards, right? That's red pill content. But when you have someone like Scott Galloway saying it nicely, saying it digestible, saying it on a podcast with Professor Galloway in his name, suddenly this sounds legitimate, right? This guy isn't an idiot, though. You're not an idiot. I have to believe that you know how to read studies. So if you actually went back and read that 80-20% study, you would know that that study is not externalizable, right? You would know that that study lacks some validity to it. So why are you perpetuating it?
What's behind me? This is from Wired magazine. Danielle, I'm not sure if you've ever seen this, but the red circles are the red spheres of social media influence. And you can see the red, there's names you'll recognize up there. It's Elon Musk, it's Andrew Tate, it's Charlie Kirk, it's Ben Shapiro. And the blue represent, opposition, opposing voices, call them liberal, call them left, whatever that might be. And that's the reason I asked you the question about the generational influence. And yeah, I mean, my daughter's a junior in high school, and she talks about how there are young men, even in small town liberal Vermont, there are so many groups that have been red pilled already. And I say this as a cautionary tale for dads and moms of young men. Your boys need help. They really, really need help because they are being drowned by the red pill influence. And how ironic that they use the red circle, but it should be, because I think this particular time it's going to really test parents. It's really going to test parents because of the amount of access to influence that they have here. It's scary.
And what advice would you give, Danny, to the parents? Yeah, like what advice do you give to moms parenting their sons who are worried about this influence?
So I'm going to go back to, and I have young boy, like adolescent boys in my life too, as well, right? That I have to, just like you were saying, Steve, like you have to stay on top of it constantly and consistently. You have to almost have constant conversations about this, right? Because they're absorbing this content constantly and consistently. So I had a friend the other day that was having, like, one of her boys said, like, red pill content stuff, right? He was like, well, women are only after your money anyway. Explore that with curiosity. Because if you explore that with defensiveness, that's what the red pill, that's what the manosphere is telling these boys that are going to come up against. Women are going to battle you on this. Women are going to tell you it's not true, but women are full of shit, blah, blah, blah. And the men that tell you it's not true, they're just beta males. You don't have to listen to them, right? So if you come at them with defensiveness, that's exactly what they're expecting. They're just going to double down. And also teenagers double down anyway. But if you come at them with curiosity, right? So he said, women are only after your money anyway. And she goes, what women? And he's like, well, women. And she was like, what women? What women are only after your money? And he's like, well, I don't know. Like, that's just how women are. And she goes, what women do you know that operate like that? And he's like, well, I'm not saying you, mom. I'm just saying women. And she wouldn't let it go, right? She's like, because what you're doing is you're asking your child to critically think. You're asking your child to not just accept what they've been told, but to critically think about this content. That is a skill that they do not have yet. And that's why the manosphere has so much influence, right? Especially on teens and young boys. That is a skill that you as a parent are helping them develop. So help them critically think through that. So she goes, well, I have a job and I actually make more than daddy does. So am I after daddy's money? Well, no, mom, I said not you. Okay, well, I have 3 sisters. You've got 3 aunties. Are any of them like that? Do you know any of them that are like that? Well, no. Your grandma worked, even back when women technically weren't working, right? Like your grandmother has always worked. Was your grandmother after your dad's money? They were poor their entire life and they struggled their entire life. Well, no. Okay, so what women? Most of your teachers are females, right? Like, especially in elementary school and high school, that tends, like, as you get older and older, there's more male teachers, but generally elementary school is a very female heavy area, right? So like most of your teachers are females, they have paying jobs. Like, what women? And suddenly they're like, yeah, I guess that's not my experience. That doesn't really, yeah, because it doesn't make any fucking sense, right? But they don't know that. They don't know how to critically think through this stuff. It sounds good. And like you were saying, Steve, like you use buzzwords, you give boys this area where they're like, you can excel here and you can be manly. They're creating a problem and solving it for you. Well, that's boxed up in like a really nice little package, right? And the other thing I want to bring up is like, please Google this, do your research on this. This is great. There's this concept of male gender role strain. And a lot of men and boys are experiencing this right now because this is sort of like our generation is sort of the first, like millennials and below, we'll say, are the first generation where like women had access to credit cards. They could get a house all by themselves, right? Well, men are being fed this protect and provide narrative, even still today. And I need people to understand that this is where we teach sex ed from. So when you look at this and you're like, where are my kids getting some of this gender role shit? They're being taught that in school. Something like 80% of sex ed reinforces harmful gender roles, right? So you have to counteract those things. But male gender role strain is an emotional distress that's experienced by men when they feel that they're not living up to some societal expectation of masculinity. So this manifests in a lot of different ways, but these masculine norms that end up being in conflict with their personal values. So I've had a lot of people tell me like, I have a little boy he's just really sensitive. He just really feels things, right? Like he's a ruminator.
Like all humans.
Like all humans, right? But then you meet up with this masculinity norm that says you can't be like that. In order to be a man, you can't be like that. That's gender role strain. But a lot of men are experiencing this because they don't know what the fuck to do with themselves because they were given this idea of like protect, provide, right? But now women are sitting here going like, what the fuck do we need you to provide for? First of all, men were never providers. Like men and women throughout history have been providers of their families, right? So that whole concept is wrong anyway. But if that's what you're being taught, and then you're growing up with this idea that like actually women are whole ass people and they can do whatever they want, this is creating gender role strain. So explore that in your young boys as well. How are they feeling authentically themselves? And how is that conflicting with messages of masculinity that they're getting? Where are those messages coming from? Who are those messages benefiting? Like we could bring up Tater Tot, right? He was selling people.
He's up here.
He's up
Stop there.
right?
He was selling
This is
people,
great.
period. That's actually true. Just that statement, period, is correct.
Yep.
But a lot of these manosphere bros are selling you something. They're selling you a course. They're selling you how to get women. They're selling you how to manipulate women. Well, then they benefit from the idea that you don't know how to get it. right? Also, TV. We talk a lot about TV. We talk a lot about stuff that we see on TV. A lot of dads on TV are presented as these like buffoons who don't know what's going on and like, haha, it's so funny. He doesn't know anything about his kids, right? The show You is really big right now because the new season just came out. We talk a lot about that. We talk a lot about like how Joe Goldberg is getting basically excused from everything he does because he's a handsome looking guy that can talk really well. Modern Family. Oh my gosh, I love that one, right? Cam and I can't remember the other guy's name though. Cam and his husband, Mitchell. Cam and Mitchell, love those two, right? Like I think they're freaking hilarious. But Claire and Phil, they're very gender rolled. They're very toxic, right? Ha ha ha, Phil's this dopey dad. He can't do anything right. Claire's this over controlling mom that like if she wasn't there, nothing would function in the family because she actually knows what the hell's going on. That's actually really toxic, right? Like, why don't dads know what's going on? Why are dads these buffoons that don't know any? Like, so we talk about how this is a bad message for men. Like, ew, do you like the way they're presenting that guy? Is that how you want to be as a dad? Is that how dad is? Dad knows your birthday. Dad knows the family schedule. You know, dad can access the family schedule on our phones, right? Like we have a shared calendar. Dad always knows what's going on. I don't know if that's a very kind depiction of men. So like you also lean into how these are actually really harmful depictions of men, how it's not painting men in a good light either.
I've had this conversation with Felice many times about obviously we know how damaging the patriarchy is to women, but to your point, Danielle, how damaging it is to men. You know, we're told that anger and lust are really the only emotions that we're allowed to show publicly.
Amen.
Yeah, there's a let me find it, y'all, because I love this quote. You know, that's where I was going.
Oh, I love Bell Hooks. Bell Hooks is a black feminist. What is the book? She wrote a book for men. We always talk about. Oh yeah, and she's the one that talks about this idea that the first victims of the patriarchy aren't women, it's men, right? Like you are abused into the patriarchy. And that's why like I have an interesting relationship with white men because in a way, like it always seems like I'm opposing them and attacking them, but in another way, I was raised steeped in patriarchy. Like Danielle said that an interesting thing at the beginning of the live where she said a lot of women were raised and they weren't allowed to fight. And I would say, you know, and so they're like, okay, like I have to fawn, I have to freeze, you know, that's their fight response. And I was raised differently, you know, like I was a division one, like my sister is like this like little model version of me, especially like when we were growing up, you know, she was like the smaller, skinny, like you know, she was raised like a girl and I was like, you know, the one that took a lot of the abuse and I just keep standing back up. So I was raised and much like men are like abused into the patriarchy and you learn like there's someone that you can't stop who's going to abuse you, embarrass you, shame you, you know, and teach you these rules that you don't want to be a part of. And then what do you do with that stress, that shame, that embarrassment that you feel that you can't stand up to this person who's hurting you? Right? In the patriarchy, shit rolls downhill. You're taught like, I can't fight this person. I can't fight my dad who won't stop hitting me, but I can make someone else hurt. Right? Like I'm going to go to school and I'm going to punch down on someone. And like, I understand how men were raised. I understand the pain and how you're not allowed to show it because that's wrong. That's weak. That's all those things. And I do think like, in a way, like I'm both very angry at men while simultaneously also very in tune with how they became to be who they are. And also because as men, you know, you're taught you can't go, like in my family, therapy is witchcraft, right? Like, oh no, only weak losers, sick losers go to therapy. Well, now I'm in therapy twice a week. So I also know like, you know, men need somebody to listen to them. They need to be able to express a wide range of emotions in a safe place. And once you learn that that's real power, right? I was taught emotions are dangerous. Don't tell anyone about you. Every little detail you divulge, that could be later used against you, right? Hold it all inside. Well, that's why men are very angry. Can't regulate your emotions. You've been holding it inside for so long until it explodes. Sorry, that was a little bit of a
two things. Two things can be true.
That's the
book.
It
is all men until it's no man, and our young man needs some help. So those two things can be true.
Thank you, Ethan, for the raid. Ethan, folks, thank you for being here. We're doing a mental health live about surviving fascism during a fascist takeover.
The quote that Felice was talking about, the book, in case because I know it's backwards, it's called The Will to Change, Men, Masculinity, and Love, Bell Hooks. Absolutely fabulous book. Like mine is highlighted and marked up and annotated and everything to the nth degree, right? And this is a lovely quote. I love this quote. I give a lot of lectures on like ambivalent sexism theory. And I always give people this quote. We can talk about ambivalent sexism theory if anyone's interested, but Bell Hooks says, and by the way, Bell Hooks is spelled with all lower cases. Was their choice. The first act of violence that patriarchy demands of males is not violence towards women. Instead, patriarchy demands of all males that they engage in acts of psychic self-mutilation, that they kill off the emotional parts of themselves. If an individual is not successful in emotionally crippling himself, he can count on patriarchal men to enact rituals of power that will assault his self-esteem.
It gives me chills. And men, let's hear about what you just said, ambivalent, whatever, in a second, because I do think people want to understand more about that. But I just want to say, like, what she's saying is Bell Hooks, who's an amazing Black feminist, Black woman doing amazing work. But what she's saying is that, men, you have to understand, you are the first victims of the patriarchy. You are taught, I have to kill off the part of me that has empathy, that can feel, that can cry, that can look at other humans and put myself in their shoes and say, I feel your pain. In the patriarchy, none of that is allowed. And unless you kill that off in yourself, then basically another male will come along and beat that empathy out of you. Whether psychologically, or physically, right?
Unless you have to title. Thank you.
Yep, yeah, The Will to Change by Bell Hooks. She's amazing. And she writes many other books. Here's my favorite one. Killing Rage.
That's a great one too.
It's so good.
Also, if you want to get into like truly your feminine rage, now I'm like looking behind me and I don't know where my books used to be like beautifully organized, and then I got new carpet in my office and now they're all over the place, and I have ADHD and they'll probably never be organized again. But
I know, it takes just 2 years until anything is the same.
A stack. I'm lucky mine are in a stack. It's just easier that way. I can just move the stack where I need to go.
Find it. Mona Eltahawy, Elthway. She's a feminist writer, and she writes from a place of rage. So if you're like, I really am trying to like harness my feminine rage and like do something powerful with it, or like I want to be validated in the rage I feel, read Mona Eltahawy, because she has a book called, I think it's The 7 Deadly Sins. And she talks about how rage is one of the sins that women commit. And another one is like profanity, because profanity isn't being nice. That's not being a sweet girl. So there's super offended women use that. Keep sweet. So she talks about how rage is something that's stolen from women, but given to men as a legitimate way to express themselves. So then when women express rage over the patriarchy and over being oppressed, we're put as like these bad people. We're the enemy. How dare you do that? And what's wrong with you? And you're not being a good woman.
That crazy woman. Why is she so mad? Ew, disgusting.
So like she writes a lot from like harness that rage. Like that rage is coming from a really good, valid place. So like do something with it. So if you want that kind of reading, Mona Eltahawy. If you want explanations of the patriarchy and like what it does to men and what it does to women and everybody, The Will to Change, Bell Hooks, any of her books are absolutely amazing. That's what it is. The 7 Necessary Sins for Women and Girls. That's what the book is called.
The 7 necessary. I need to write that down. I'll write it down in my notes. But yeah, and that's what we're saying. Like, it's important to understand how you became indoctrinated into the patriarchy. And I always like to say, in the patriarchy, you're taught men are men, right? You can be angry, but you can't cry, right? Well, unfortunately, anger is an emotion. That's what I think it's important for men to understand. Anger is an emotion. You are being emotional when you are angry. It's just a base emotion. That's why infants are always screaming. They haven't learned to identify their emotions and refine what's going on with them. So they're just screaming, right? Anger is an emotion. And when you get better at identifying your, different feelings, then you can say, okay, I feel angry, but where's that coming from? Right? Why am I angry? Am I scared?
This topic speaks to what this live was about tool. Everybody, we should be easily at 250 now. Please give Danielle. It's awesome to have her here. Please don't forget, please, pay apps are in her picture, and don't forget about getting us to 300K, please.
Can I say one thing real quick? Jen, thank you. I just saw, sorry, I just refreshed my email. So Jen, thank you. And Jen, I love you, but thank you so much. Amazing content and guests. Love you. Thank you, Jen, for the $20. And Cassandra, thank you for the $5. I sent you a message on your socials, but I forgot to tell you my username so you'd know who I was. Okay. I will look for it. I don't always, I'm so sorry if people have been messaging me on TikTok or on Discord. It's just because of my mental health. I have an agreement with my therapist because I get a lot of threats. So I don't check it, but I'll look, Cassandra. Thank you. And Maxwell, thank you for the super sticker on YouTube. Appreciate it. Happy Tuesday to you too. Sorry for interrupting, Steve. Yeah, it's hormones. Longest 4 years, it's hormones. Men have so many hormones. It's true. Listen, we all have hormones. We're all feeling feelings, right? Like, all of our hormones are out of balance as we get older. That's something Danny and I talk about a lot. Like, that's how Liver King came to be doing $11,000 of steroids. Highly recommend that documentary that just came out. But that's an example, right? Of how insecurity in men that's unidentified and the manosphere leads you to believe I've got to be the manliest man, right? Like I've got to look a certain way. And if I don't, I'm not valuable in society, right? I mean, that's the lesson. And that's why I have deep empathy for men, because I was raised by the most patriarchal, the most abusive father who was like, my brother didn't come along till 4 years after me. So like, that's how I was raised, like my sister was frail and sensitive. And I was like, every time you hit me, I'm getting back up. So I get the pain that men are going through and the suppressed rage. But the more you learn like, hey, crying's okay. Identifying emotions is okay. Feeling things, connecting to other humans. That's the way out.
This speaks to the topic we were discussing about how tools, the toolbox to fight back against fascism, because the manosphere, red pilling, etc., are recruitment tools for young men, for young white men in particular, right? And it's working. It's been a concerted effort for decades, and we see historical examples. Again, history doesn't repeat, but it certainly does rhyme. And I think you said, Danny, that it's Gen Alpha, and then so the generational damage that the red pill has done to young men and to ultimately to young women as well, to society in general, I should say, we're going to be living in this for a while. Yeah, I think the word you use, we're fucked. I would agree.
So I do think it's worth noting, we're fucked here in America, right? Because we literally have the manosphere running our country right now. We have the manosphere running our country, and it's worth noting and really interesting that in England, so the show Adolescence came out on Netflix, right? And that was really discussing how the manosphere content that exists online translates into real world, the V word that I'm not really willing to say right now, in real life, right? And so England, after this came out, recognized that this was a problem. They recognized that UK boys were getting drawn into the manosphere and getting these harmful messages about masculinity and women and stuff. And so they are actively putting education in their schools, conflicting this manosphere content and discussing the content, unpacking that content. So they purposely put this education in their education system to try to counteract this. Because they're like, wow, this is a social health issue, right? It's a social problem. It's going to become a health problem. It's going to become a criminal problem. So they put this into UK schools and they were like, let's have a discussion about this, right? Boys and men obviously need spaces to have discussions about healthy masculinity and have a safe space to ask questions about this, right? They're engaging in discussion. In the US, we're doubling down on it. We're removing discussions of consent from sex education. We're removing sex education overall, right? And we're not giving any of these good, healthy spaces to have these discussions. So in the US, We are fucked. No one's going to do anything about it. And as a matter of fact, our administration promotes these ideas. But you can do something about it. We could do something about it. And the UK government has recognized the problem and is doing something about it. Now, it's not in their schools yet. They're still developing the curriculum, right? Like, it's one thing to say, like, we're going to do this, but it's another thing to, like, it takes time to implement that stuff and to build it into the curriculum because you want good content, right? You want to make sure you have good content. You want to make sure that you're creating a space to actually have these good discussions. Otherwise, you could end up doing more harm than good. So they haven't started implementing it yet, but it's something that they're intending on doing.
Do you think, along, again, toolbox to fight against fascism, that age-appropriate sex ed would be considered one of those tools?
100%. Yeah. And I'm going to say it, and it's going to be controversial. We need to be doing sex ed from kindergarten onward, period. Like, before even. Like,
Can I talk?
Preschool, right?
Like, before you go into, I just want to give the practical application of why, right? It's age appropriate sex ed. And the reason why it's needed is because I'm an example of why, right? When I went to, I grew up in, I like to call it Pentecostal evangelicalism, where my mom was speaking in tongues, telling me the Lord was speaking to her and telling her things. Yeah. And one of those, there was all sorts of messages from the Lord, but that's another story. But the reason that age appropriate sex ed, right? Like, hey, this is how your body works. Here are the places where people shouldn't be touching you, was because in my family, there was no healthy touch ever. Like, not a hug, not a pat on the arm. So I didn't understand this as a 3-year-old, as a 4-year-old, but I was starving for healthy touch or for affection of any kind. And then if you are a 3 or 4-year-old and don't understand what healthy touch is with an adult, and you've never experienced touch at all, and then someone starts giving you attention that's not in the appropriate way. If you have not been educated around healthy touch as a child, then you might accept the wrong type of touch as love.
There's also a whole like religious aspect of it. Like in the very beginning of my doctorate, I was studying a lot of purity culture, which is what I grew up in. Purity culture is linked to religion, but most of the sex ed that we give in the United States is purity culture based. Purity culture doesn't teach consent because consent is irrelevant. So when we hear Republicans talking about removing consent from sex ed, and people are like, why would they do that? Because they don't believe your consent is relevant, because you shouldn't be having sex before you get married anyway. That just shouldn't be happening. And then after you get married, your consent's irrelevant because your body belongs to your husband. So your consent doesn't really matter anymore. So that's why they want to remove consent from sex ed, because consent doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter because you shouldn't be having sex. And then when you can have sex, your spouse owns your body, right? So when we look at that, right, we look at how we're teaching sex ed in school, and then we look at these messages that people get in like the church. You should always listen to adults. You should always listen to the person in authority. And also, most of the time, little girls are taught that they are the gatekeepers to sex, right? This really harmful idea about women being gatekeepers to sex. You also hear this in red pill content. You hear this in manosphere content. Actually, we see it. There's certain ideas that we see bleed across the 4 aspects of the manosphere. And then there's certain content that are like really specific to each one. This one honestly just bleeds across all 4 of them. The idea that women are the gatekeepers to sex, right? Which means that men should always be ready to have sex and always be willing to have sex. So these sexual fiends, these monsters, they can't help themselves. And as a girl, you're the gatekeeper to sex. You have the job of saying no. And if you are SA'd, it's because you brought it upon yourself. You should have said no, or you shouldn't have put yourself in that position, or you shouldn't have been wearing that. We literally teach this in sex ed, even in public schools, right? So then when you learn that as a young girl and you have your pastor assault you, or you have a boy in your school, like I cannot tell you how many female clients I have had who have been SA'd by another boy in their school or someone that they went to school with. And they froze, right? Because that's a normal response. Or they fawned, that's a normal response. But then they're never going to tell anybody because they believe they brought it on themselves
Their fault.
anyway. Right. So when you teach young girls that if they are SA'd, it's their fault, that men can't, they just can't help themselves. They just can't help themselves, guys. They see an ankle and they just go crazy,
Boys
right?
being boys, right?
Boys will be boys. And you
Well,
also
what
said
were
that.
you wearing when you were raped? What were you wearing as a 3-year-old when you were essayed by a youth pastor? That's what.
Boys are visual creatures. How many people have heard that? Right? I don't know who the fuck isn't a visual creature, guys. Like, I mean, there are just abilities that you can't see, right? But like, we are all visual.
Locker room talk. That's a good one. Lost on purpose.
Right.
Locker room talks. No, the boys will be
Right.
boys.
Boys will be boys. So then when you hear those messages as a young girl, then you believe that it is your fault, but you also don't believe that you have the right to say no. And also, this is another one that drives me absolutely insane. I cannot tell you how often we teach sexual coercion to kids as if it is normal. So this is a totally normal story that you will hear in sex ed. Look at your kids' sex ed content. I encourage you to look at the content that the school gives them. Do not trust the school. Look at their content and look at SEICUS, SEICUS. They're the ones that have really good, like, comprehensive sex ed standards. We go off of SEICUS, right? So look them up. Look up
Again,
what their
it's SIC. Say that again so I can write it down. Got my.
SEIC, SEICUS. SEICUS. Let me make sure I'm writing that correctly.
I see. And just, so we could be in big boxes. I'm on my phone. Otherwise, I would pull up the websites like I usually do, but I'm not in TikTok Studio because Danny shouldn't be in a small box while she's giving us her brain. SEICUS, right?
It's SIECUS. My bad. SIECUS.
SIE. Okay.
Seekus.org. And they are the ones that have been doing like comprehensive sex ed since the 1960s. They've been creating, and they have cores, like comprehensive sex ed core values. That is how you know that your kid is getting comprehensive sex ed. Do they follow all of the Seekus comprehensive sex ed values, right? This story is told in sex ed, probably 80% of sex ed across America. Johnny and Susie are hanging out at their house. And Johnny and Susie have been dating for 6 months. And Johnny has been asking Susie to have sex with him for this entire 6 months. And Susie has been being a good girl. Usually doesn't say she's been being a good girl. I added that. Susie has been being a good girl. And she's been saying no, 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 right? And then one evening when they're at home in their basement and Susie's parents aren't home, he just keeps asking her if she will have sex, and Susie feels pressured and she wants to say no, but she gives in to peer pressure. And she has sex with him because he just won't stop asking, and he threatens to break up with her if she won't. And then 2 weeks later, he breaks up with Susie. And Susie is so sad and depressed because she gave the most precious part of herself. Oh, I forgot the man's name because I forget men's name because they're irrelevant to the story. Just kidding. Johnny, we'll say. And she's so upset and so depressed because she gave the most precious part of herself that she can never get back to Johnny. And now Susie's depressed. That's sexual coercion. That is sexual coercion. She said no. She said no multiple times. She said she didn't want to do this, but Johnny wouldn't give up. He pressured her. He threatened to break up with her. So she finally gave in. And this is presented to adolescents as normal sexuality. So no wonder we have boys and men that don't understand SA. No wonder we have boys and men that don't understand consent. No wonder we have so many young women who say that they have been SA'd, and so many young men saying that they are not people that would ever do that because they were taught that sexual coercion is normal. And as a therapist, I have lost count, absolutely lost count of how many women I have had in the therapy room that have told me a story that they were like, yeah, and this encounter felt terrible to me. And then they describe an SA. And as a therapist, you have to look at them and be like, if anyone else described that story to me, I would have told them that that was an assault. How do you feel about that? And they like break down crying because they're like, I always knew something was wrong and I said no and blah, blah, blah. And then you bring up sexual coercion because they were taught about like the R word, right? They were taught about the R word. And then they look at that and they go, well, it wasn't really that though. Like he didn't hold me down or like, whatever. But then you bring about sexual coercion and you teach them about real consent. And then they're like, I don't know if most of my sexual encounters were consensual. Yeah, I know. Because we teach sex ed as if sexual coercion is a normal experience, and it is not.
Isn't that the truth? And I always talk about being essayed as a child, but like as a 4-year-old at church, right? I'm not going to go into the details, but I came home, got into the car after Sunday school without underwear on. Now, what would be a normal reaction in a family if your 4-year-old child had underwear on, gets in a car without underwear on? In my family, that was, what did you do to deserve this? Like, what did you say? I was basically ashamed as a 4-year-old child for being essayed. And that is, I would say, just as someone who grew up deep in evangelicalism, deep, 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 the onus, right? The blame is always on women, but even children, women. Oh, she was asking for it. It was what she was wearing. It was and I talk about this, like, why is my hair this long? I once cut my hair in 3rd grade and I was beaten, like women only have long hair. That's only what men want to see, right? Like, I was taught in every way to exist in a way. I have no tattoos for a reason. It's interesting when I started to do a lot of research later as an adult that, women with short hair and tattoos are trafficked less. They're less desirable. Oh no, go ahead and read into it. You want to be trafficked less, right? Like there's a reason, and unbeknown to me why I was conditioned to be a certain way, right? There's only a way that's acceptable. Like if something happened to me, it couldn't be a pastor's fault. It must have been my fault. I was asking for it. I'm a woman as a 4-year-old with feminine wiles. So I must have been up to something, right? And that was instilled in me from the earliest age. And that's why, like, whenever I deal with shaming online, it's such a deep, deep wound because, as a 4-year-old, I'm looking for my parents to protect me. And they're like, what did you do? What were you saying?
And
it's like sorry, Jenny.
No, go.
I was going to say it's the perpetuation of the grape culture. Obviously, the red pilling of the manosphere that says that the patriarchy in general says that women are property. Therefore, they don't see the harm. It's almost an expectation.
Coverture law.
That exactly. Literally took the words out of my mouth. It creates this scenario where our leaders in our nation and influential voices in our nation, not just here, but we'll say here for now, that are influencing the next generation of young men to achieve. With your success comes your ability to own women. With your wealth, with your status, with your culture, gives you access to more women, and they will be subservient to you. So those of us who are having these conversations, trying to influence young minds to say, no, we are facing not only the societal roadblock, the red pill, but what our media tells them is success. That's a tough fight. That's why I said earlier about how this era for parenting is going to be extremely challenging. Good luck.
Enjoy this live. Let's tap the screen. Let's get to 300K as fast as possible. Please gift Dr. Danny and Fax for being here. Because I just saw, I think it was Josie, who's like, it's so refreshing not to talk about politics. And I do agree. And let's do, just like we tap the screen during regular lives for the people's receipts and stuff, let's like give this live the same respect. Let's make it successful. Share the live with people that need to hear it. And I agree. This is very refreshing. And I appreciate everyone for being here. We should probably figure out a time we can do this every week.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. I think this might be a good segue to talk about ambivalent sexism, because what both of you are discussing, like, this is, the more you see it, the more you can't unsee it, and you can have discussions with your kids about it if you have language for it. The more you have language for it, the more you can have discussions for it, and the more you can start noticing it when it happens. Like, how many videos on TikTok have I seen? Like, there's this one video going really, really viral right now where this woman is saying, like, this man is saying, well, if I tell you my intentions, then I can't get you. Like, if I'm honest with you, then you won't want to be with me. And the woman's like, yeah, women get to make that choice. then you can go be with someone else.
Informed consent is
informed consent.
You have to inform before people can consent. Men are struggling with that currently.
Struggling. And so he's basically saying, like, if I lie to you and tell you I want a relationship, I want all the things that you want, then maybe you'll sleep with me. But if I tell you that I'm just trying to get in your pants, then you won't sleep with me. And the woman goes, yeah, that's how that works. Because women get to choose and they get to have consent. Y'all, that is sexual coercion. That is a violation of consent. But notice how these men are presenting it like this is normal behavior. It is not, right? So like we see sexual coercion presented like lying to women to get them into bed, telling women that you want more than what they want. Like there's this kind of idea on a date, and I always tell people, men will be like, what are you looking for in a man? Don't tell him, because he's just going to pretend to be whatever you're looking for. He's just going to act however that is to try to get you, right? And we've done studies on this, right? We have asked abusers we have literally asked them, how long do you have to lie to your victim? How long do you think it's appropriate to lie to your victim before you feel like you have them hooked and you can flip that switch. Sorry, you can flip that switch, right? How long do you play Prince Charming and pretend to be everything she wants in a man? And they have asked men that have been convicted of DV these questions and asked them to come up with a number. 18 months. They came up with 18 months, a full year and a half that they will pretend to breed Prince Charming before they have you roped in and they will flip it. They said you have to lie to her for at least a year and a half, because then when you start sprinkling in the abuse, when you start gaslighting her, she second guesses herself. If you try to do it too soon, she's going to realize what you're doing and she's going to dip out.
Like trafficking, it leans in on not only coercion, but trafficking as well. So
coercion is the first step of trafficking. I mean, that's essentially, and like how people who were trafficked then become abusers, right? Like, and involved in helping people traffic. I want to say this is not about naming names, or this is not a live to call people up, but there was a creator that Fax used to have on his live a lot, and is no longer with us. No, not on he's on the earth, but no longer with us on TikTok, I don't know, I'm not going to say his name, but he was a professor, allegedly. He was teaching at a university in Florida. And it turns out he had done a lot of horrible things, including impregnating a student. He's recently no longer is working at that university. And I had this, like, when I first started hearing when a very brave woman who we all love, someone running for Congress in a red state, I heard that she was the reason that this was all coming out. It was the best lesson to me, because one of my biggest regrets in life is like, I learned, because I grew up in this authoritarian, evangelical, abusive family, that I could never be honest. So I hate myself in a lot of ways for never filing police reports, for never saying, oh, this is what happened to me as a child, because I always, and I'm sure 1 in 3 women have been SA'd, and a lot of people feel this same guilt I feel. And I'm not saying, and believe me, I just want to extend to you, if you never report, that's fine. And you need to work through that, and you don't need to feel guilt. Whatever you have to do to protect yourself and be safe and keep yourself safe as a woman is most important. But it was just interesting to me to see, like, because I almost said her name, but because of this woman's bravery to say, like, hey, I'm noticing these things. And because this same creeper happened to call me on his spring break. And after the first call, I called Fax and I was like, this guy's a predator. I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't think we should platform him anymore. This guy's a weirdo. Like, I promise you, he's a weirdo. And it's just interesting. And I had a call with him where I called him up and screamed at him for like 3 hours, which is pointless with narcissists. But, like, I just said to him, like, he's like, hey, you can call me anything you want. This was literally what he told me, word for word. But anyone that accuses me of forcing a woman to do something is lying. And I said, I have listened to you make content, sit on lives talking about being a safe space for women, and specifically talking about informed consent. And I was like, You think nobody can decide whether or not they want to be with you intimately without informed consent, without you being honest. You have denied every single woman and near baby informed consent in this situation. And ironically, Hawk, that lawyer who has like 1 million followers, he made this huge, like 15-minute video on informed consent and how in certain jurisdictions, that's a criminal offense. It's a civil offense in every jurisdiction, and you can be called after liably. And right before he blocked me forever, I sent him that video and I said, you better lawyer up. You are a criminal. Like, I mean, that's the reality. And if you want a real challenge, because I'm a Division I athlete. I love to compete. I love convincing people to like me. But if I'm lying to people, if I'm distorting the truth about myself, they don't like the real me, right? Nobody can consent to liking me, wanting to be around me without the truth. That's what this is all contingent on, is the truth.
And like consent, people, because we don't teach consent, like Fry's consent, right? Freely given. If your consent is, if you feel pressured, if you can't say no, right? So like if your husband makes you feel like shit for saying no, or if your husband's a pouty jerk when you say no, and you're like, well, I might as well just do this for him because otherwise I'm going to have to deal with his mood. Your consent was not freely given, right? So freely given, it is reversible. That means we can get all the way into the bedroom with our clothes off and you can put on a condom and then I can be like, actually, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. Right. At any point, we can be engaged in the act and I can be like, can we stop? Something's coming up for me. I don't want to do this anymore. Right. And I have done that with partners. I have been engaged in the act and like something, the way that they touched me, or what we were doing, like something trick. And I was like, we need to stop. I need to pull back. And they have immediately been like, what's going on? What can I do for you? What's happening? Right? They immediately attuned to the need that was there right now because they're not selfish assholes. So it's reversible. It's informed. That means that if you lie to me about getting an STI screen, that's not informed consent. If you tell me that you're not sleeping with your ex-girlfriend, but you actually are, that's not informed consent. If you tell me that you want a relationship with me and I'm engaging in sexual activity with you with the understanding that we are moving towards or in a relationship, but you have no intentions of that, that is not informed consent. You got access to my body through lying. So it's informed. So Fries, it is excited or enthusiastic, right? There are people that are asexual and gray sexual, and we can talk about that another time. Like sometimes they say like, it's hard for me to get to that excited point, but like I'm open to it, right? Like, but in general, they have to be enthusiastic. It can't be like, I don't know, like I'm really nervous and I don't really want to do this, but I want to make you happy. No. Right. And also I don't want to have sex with somebody that's not like super excited about having sex with me. That's weird. So, but people do it. So excited. And then it's specific. So like if I'm consenting to oral, that does not mean I'm consenting to penetrative sex. Right. So it is specific and you can change it at any time. So that's what actual consent means. It doesn't mean lack of a no. It doesn't mean absence of a no. It doesn't mean, well, she didn't say no. She was just quiet. It means active, informed consent.
This has been absolutely wonderful. I have to drop. Thank you guys for first, please. Thanks for reaching out. Danny, it's been a pleasure to be on this panel with you. It's been great. I hope we can do it again. This has been amazing. Everybody, definitely. Please, like Danny said earlier, you should be paying large for that massive brain. And this one has a large brain as well. So thank you, everybody, for having me again. Please, thank you, Danny. Thank you guys very, very much.
Thanks.
I'll see y'all tomorrow morning,
You're the best,
8 o'clock
Steve.
Eastern time. Thank you, guys. I love you guys.
Take care
Want to
of
drop me,
yourself.
please?
We love you.
I will. Thank you. You want to drop me to protect the algorithm?
Oh, wait, I don't even know what you're saying. Okay, yeah, got it. Sorry, I don't know how to run lives from anything but TikTok Studio. Okay, now it's just us girlies. Should we do? I mean, we can keep talking, or also if people want to start requesting. I know someone was requesting earlier. I didn't know. Like, I was just kind of waiting. But if people have questions for Danny or things they would like to talk about, like around, fascism and surviving, mental health, whatever. We covered a lot of topics, but definitely you're welcome to request. Again, that guy, thank you. DeWolf has been blocked, the weirdo in the comments who was harassing everyone. Sorry. Like I said, I don't usually do lives on my phone. So I'm like kind of fumbling around like an idiot figuring out how to do this, but I did finally notice, and I'm sorry that people were suffering in the comments with his idiocy. He is gone now. So, Lost on Purpose. Great name. Maybe I should, too bad that name's taken. I should probably take it. Hi.
Hello. How are you?
It's just barely surviving.
Okay. So I have a 24-year-old son and a 14-year-old son. And when you guys were talking about misogyny, I live in Oklahoma, so it is
Constant battle.
Yes. And, there's not a lot of help, because when I do take them to counseling, typically MAGA.
We lost. There we go.
I think I think either you got for a second. So we just heard MAGA. So whatever the sentence was that ended in MAGA, just repeat that.
Okay. I was saying, like if I were to take them to therapy or, something like that, or just any type of positive help, the majority of my state is MAGA. And so they kind of believe the same things.
The superintendent of schools in Oklahoma, Ryan J. Walters, is now teaching the 2020 election was shady. Like I fully in Arizona, I'm a former teacher. In Arizona, we're now only 48th worst in education, not because we got any better, but because Oklahoma's reading and math scores dropped so low that they're now 49 and we're 48. Like, I am so concerned about what's going on in Oklahoma. But sorry, I'll let Danny speak. No. She's the expert.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a anti-oppressive therapist, right? I'm like, how do I say this in the best way? So I would, first of all, I tell people all the time, question your providers, right? Like, you can email people, you can ask them what their political stances are. They can refuse to tell you, but I wouldn't go with that provider, right? And I'm really famous for saying, like, question your providers. Ask me what my political stance is. Ask me where I stand on women's rights. Ask me where I stand on LGBTQ rights. Ask me where I stand on like AB care and stuff like that, because I will tell you. And if you disagree with me, fine. There's a million other therapists that will take your case, right? That's totally fine. But a lot of people are looking for that, right? So you can Google like therapist social justice in your area. You can Google like anti-oppressive therapist. I specifically say on my website that I operate through like an anti-oppressive feminist lens, that I operate through like a human first lens. Dig on them, see what they've got. You're more likely to find that in a private practice, because a lot of the, like, in my experience, particularly like in places like Oklahoma, a lot of them are connected to religion, right? We have like Catholic, Catholic charities, Lutheran Family Services. Like, a lot of these people receive funding from the church. So even if they feel a particular type of way, they can't tell you that because they might risk their job, right? Like, they could be reported or something like that. So, and a lot of like new therapists have to work at those places because they're trying to get hours and things like that. So I would specifically Google exactly what you're looking for. Google a therapist that operates from an intersectional feminist lens. Google a therapist that operates from like more of a humanistic lens, because humanistic lenses tend to be less oppressive, not always, but tend to be. So I would ask your therapist. And like, if they say like, oh no, I'm a religious based therapist. Nope. Oh, I don't discuss my political views because I don't believe that they're relevant. The fuck they aren't. They come up in the therapy room all the time, right? And the other thing is I really encourage people to take advantage of telehealth because if you don't have, like, I live in an area where 78% of people voted for Trump. I only have 2 clients from the area in which I live. So only 2 clients live in the same area that I live in. All the rest of my clients live somewhere else, right? And they can access me because I have telehealth. So telehealth can be a really big like bridge because your area might be super, super red, but you might be able to access a therapist in a bigger city where you have more access to therapists that believe more, less oppressive stuff, I guess.
And I find also, and this is just like from a person who has experienced a lot of trauma, I actually love telehealth therapy because I feel safer in my environment. And when I feel safer at home and feel comfortable, I'm able to share more. Like I find it kind of uncomfortable to be in someone else's office or I feel, I just don't feel safe. So I love telehealth for that reason, because you can stay in your safe space or your child can, and you can kind of hear what's going on in the conversation as well. And understand one of the ways they're trying to punish, I like to say, or steal from the middle and lower classes is by saying, hey, if you can't drive physically to a doctor, then it won't be covered under Medicare and Medicaid. This is one of the way they're trying to limit people's care. And I think for me, telehealth has been a real savior, especially like I live in Arizona, and I like to ask people, just all sorts of things, like a scenario, like here's something that happened to me, like what's your on this? Or I asked someone, do you believe in divorce? It can be as simple as that. If a therapist tells you they don't believe anyone should ever be divorced, that's a very scary thing, right? They're telling you there's no amount of abuse you could go through where you should not remain in a relationship. That's quite terrifying. So if you think about it a lot, I have 5 questions I like to ask therapists. Like, are you religious? Like, what role, what role does religion play in your life? Do you believe in divorce? Like, who did you vote for? Like simple things like that. And you'll know immediately. And apathy. If someone says, I don't discuss politics or politics doesn't play a role in my life, that's how 1930s Germany occurred. Apathetic people who sat around saying this isn't affecting me. That's
and there
very
is
scary.
no anti-oppressive therapy. Like, just to be clear, your anti-oppressive therapists that work from an anti-oppressive social justice lens will not tell you that politics don't matter. They will not tell you that their politics are private and they don't discuss that. Absolutely not. My clients deserve to know if I am advocating for them outside of the therapy room. They deserve to know if I practice what I preach. Right. And they deserve to know if I'm sitting here pretending to be on their side in the therapy. And like, you might as a therapist actually be like, oh no, I really am on my client's side, blah, blah, blah. But if you walk out of that therapy room and you vote against their interests, I don't know. I just feel like you're not being totally honest with your clients. And I feel like your clients would want to know that.
I like what you said earlier, to ask them if they're human first.
That's a great question. No.
That is so sad that we really do have to ask that, though.
Or I have another example. I had a therapist who I actually liked him. Like when I always talk about how I went to PTSD camp, which started out with 6 weeks outpatient intensive therapy. And then we did go into the woods. But it was me and like a bunch of veterans, and we would have group therapy. And then we had individual therapy sessions. There were 12 therapists. There was this one guy. I did like him. He was from Virginia. But at one point he told me that the answer for me and how I would fix my PTSD was, you need to shut off the TV and stop listening to political shows. I'm like, what's a political show? And he said, the news. Just stop listening to the news. And I was like, hey, listen, I never wanted to do this to you, but I'm going to have to push back. Like, if I don't listen to the news, this was 2022 when Roe v. Wade was just, when the Dobbs decision just went down. I'm like, you are a white male from Virginia. And I think that's a very privileged stance to take, for you to tell me who may not be able to get the health care I need to stop listening to the news. Like, and I've heard many therapists give that advice. And I always see that as a red flag. Like, if the news doesn't affect you and and I'm not saying, just be clear, I'm not saying like if you're OCD and you're like watching the news 24 hours a day, that's not healthy. Balance in all things. But if the advice is, hey, just disengage, don't know what's going on in the world, that's coming from someone who's sitting in a place of privilege where what's going on in the world is not affecting them.
Yeah. And so I'm going to read you this is straight off my website. It says Therapy with Danielle. Like, there's usually an about section.
What is your website name? Tell us.
It's inbedwithdanielle.com. I just double checked.
Danielle could be your therapist.
Inbedwithdanielle.com.
That would be amazing.
So, it says Therapy with Danielle. Most therapists will have an about section where they talk about what therapeutic lens they work through, right? So this is what mine says. Tell me if this leaves you any question as to where I stand. I am a queer sex therapist and board certified clinical sexologist who works from an intersectional sex positive lens. I approach sexual concerns in a humanistic, person-centered, anti-oppressive, judgment-free, and trauma-informed way. My therapy room is a safe space for you to explore your sexuality and address any barriers to fulfilling your sexual goals and desires. I believe my clients are experts in their own lives and that their lived experience is valuable. This allows therapy to be a collaborative process that we navigate together.
Yeah.
Pretty unquestionable where I stand.
Yeah,
like,
that's what I need.
Find you a therapist that is blatant and outspoken. And if they won't tell you, there's a reason. And I saw someone in the comments saying that they used BetterHelp and it got more expensive. Fuck BetterHelp, guys. Fuck them. They're awful. Most people do not have good experiences and they get more and more and more expensive. And also, they're really oppressive towards their therapists. They don't pay them a livable wage, and the way that they make them work is terrible. However, if you want therapy and you do not have insurance or you cannot afford it, Open Path Collective. Open Path Collective is a collective of therapists. So it's a website that is hosted
Danny's
as
on
therapists. There. I'm on there. I'm not accepting new clients through Open Path right now, but like if enough people I have about 4 spots open. If a lot of people are interested, I could think about opening up sliding fee scale spots just to get more people who can't afford therapy. It's one of the reasons I became a therapist. But it's $40 to $80. The therapist themselves sets their minimum standard that they will accept. We pay a one-time fee to be listed on their website. You pay a one-time fee to have access to all of the therapists on there. It is a one-time fee. I think it's like $40. The therapists on there charge anywhere between $40 and $80 for a session. So if you don't have insurance, or you can't afford therapy otherwise, Open Path Collective is actually cheaper than BetterHelp because you will just pay per session and they are real therapists doing real sessions, right? Most of them will do telehealth. Some of them do in-person sessions. And if you want in-person, just click that. Be like Oklahoma in-person only, right? So you can narrow it by that. So it'll say, remember your therapist has to be licensed in the state that you are physically located. Right? I'm licensed in Nebraska and Florida, which means that I can treat clients that are in Nebraska and Florida, but my clients have to be located in one of those 2 states. I'm actually licensed in 2 other states, but I'm not accepting clients in those states right now for various reasons. So we'll stick with Nebraska and Florida. So you have to physically be located there. Okay. Right? So it doesn't matter where your therapist is. Your therapist can be anywhere in the country. They just have to be licensed in the state that you are physically located in.
Okay. And one last question. So can you think of any like movies or, to just give my kids like an example of, you're talking about Will and Grace and how one of the relationships is very toxic. And I don't know, just something to kind of plant some seeds or.
Gosh. No, I'm trying to come up with any positive families that I have seen on TV. That's a really great question, and I'm sad that I can't come up with anything.
Or movies or anything.
It is a good question. I'm trying to think. Can anyone in the comments think of movies that model like healthy family, open?
or
I
egalitarian families. I'm trying to think.
yeah.
Yeah, or any books that, or any podcasts or anything. It's so bad in Oklahoma.
Guys, these are hilarious. Some of the stuff that comes up is Modern Family. Absolutely not. The Office. Absolutely not. Home Improvement. Absolutely not. Like, not the Addams Family. Yeah. There you go.
Oh, that
The
is a good
Addams
one.
Family. Yeah.
Morticia is a
Morticia. All
great
that. Love
example.
that.
Morticia and what's the yeah,
Oh,
that's
The
Mordecai.
Fosters. That's an old one. But I used that at one point in my therapy practice a lot. It's a show called The Fosters. It's about a lesbian couple that fosters kids, right? And it kind of goes through like all of their, like what all the kids go through and like what they go through fostering. That's a really great one. Modern Family's not great because again, like the dad's a dope and the mom runs everything. She's the default parent. She does everything. Um, 19 Kids and Counting comes up. Absolutely not. Yeah, it's hard because like you look, even when you Google it, when I just Googled like TV shows that model equality, and that's what comes up. Things like 19 Kids and Counting. No. So you have to be really careful. Um, a lot of these I haven't seen, like Wizards of Waverly Place comes up. I haven't seen that. I think that's a kid's show.
Or maybe we should
Disney.
go the
Show up on
opposite route. Like maybe something that shows the damages caused because of that, or like something simple like where I could be like, can you see how if they were to react this way, or I don't know. I'm so lost at what to do about this.
It's hard. So I do engage in conversations regularly when we're watching TV shows, right? So like Modern Family being a good example where Claire, oh, and I don't know if a lot of people have seen Modern Family, but like usually Phil's this dopey dad. Claire, the mom, always knows what's going on. And she is kind of the one that knows the schedule. She knows where the kids are. And like Phil kind of always makes these mistakes because like he's just a dumb dad that can't be expected to know how to take care of his family. And so we talk about that. We talk about like, is that how your dad acts? Does your dad know what's going on in the house? Like, dad has the schedule, right? Like, dad knows the schedule. We share a schedule on Google. So like, dad always knows what's going on, usually more than I do, right? So like, cause I have ADHD and I fucking forget shit. So like, you bring that up and say like, when you have, depictions of women of being like, I cannot stand this. Once you see it, you won't unsee it, guys. The amount of times in a show, something happens and women look at the men and she goes, oh, what are we going to do? No woman in my life has ever done that. The woman always knows what to do. The men are usually looking at the women going, what are we going to do? And using her brain, right? So like I pause that and I'm like, when have you ever seen that in real life? When in real life does something happen and women look around and go, where's the man? What are we going to do? Right? Like call that stuff out as it's happening because kids are absorbing this content.
I
Right? So
agree.
like as it's
100%.
happening, pause that.
It's not about
Bro, you
finding
okay?
like the right shows to watch to like change their minds. I think I agree. It's like if you're spending time with your kid and you're watching, say, Modern Family, because this is one of my deep-seated pet peeves, like call out what I call weaponized incompetence, right? When men are pretending to be dopey or not understand what's going on, right? This is something that is often occurring in marriages. Women are responsible and doing so many different roles. Well, the man's like, oh, I'm a little lost, or I don't know how to do the laundry, or I don't know how to do dishes, right? Like say, hey, you're a man, right? To your son, you're super smart. You can figure things out, right? You don't need people to help you figure things out. Like weaponized incompetence isn't a good thing. Like it's good to be a partner in a relationship, an equal partner who's just as capable as your partner, right? I mean, and I think like you don't have to be watching the best shows. It's just, and as a mother, right? Like how you would like to be treated in a relationship. And when you're watching TV with someone, with your child who's a male, who's getting older, who's an adult, and you're showing them like, hey, we're seeing this. This is the feelings it brings up for me, or this is how I would want to be treated, and especially if your kid has seen not you and not the best relationships, use that as an example, right? Like, hey, like this is what we experienced and this is what a healthy relationship would be like. This is how I would want you to treat a woman. This is how I want to be treated, right? Because boys love their mothers. They understand. They want the best for you. And that's what I would tell them is like, it's important that you treat women like you would want someone to treat me.
Yeah, somebody said This Is Us, and Jack, I think that he's a really good, don't you think?
Oh yeah. I love This Is Us, right? And like they also they kind of move through some of that. Like they talk about what is Randall, right? Like Randall and his wife have some of those discussions about that. Like when she gets her own business and she starts being really successful. So like This Is Us is a really great way. Also point out anytime point out gender stereotypes, right? Like that's ultimately what we're doing because our kids are consuming this stuff in media and that's what becomes normalized. So we're teaching our kids at an age appropriate level what gender stereotypes are, what that sounds like, what that looks like. And then once you start that discussion, ask them, be like, let me know if you see that in any shows we watch together. I would love to have that discussion. And then watch a show and see if they come up with anything, right? Often they won't say anything right off the bat or whatever, but sometimes I'll literally pause the TV and be like, ooh, did you catch that? Did you catch that? They just reinforced the gender stereotype. Did you catch it? What was it? What do you think it was? And then we have a discussion. Like now it's kind of a game, right? Now it's kind of like, ooh, did you catch it? Did you catch that? That one was like really subtle. There was a really subtle one that I noticed. Did you notice it? And this is how we can have discussions about shows. And you don't have to do it. Like you do it with some regularity. But also if my kid's looking at me like, we are pausing the show every 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, you get it. I get it. Like, I just want you to notice, right? I want you to start noticing. And then we get to a point where we can watch a whole show and then we're going to process it. Like watching you and then processing it afterwards. I mean, like, what did you notice? Like last night, it was like, what did you notice? Did you notice how Joe got excused of any accountability, even though his actions were really bad? Or like one of the things that the kids are noticing is like, he always has a good reason, doesn't he? He always has a justification for why he's doing that. Like, what do you think that means? So you just have these open discussions. And remember, these are continual discussions. Like parenting is an active job every single day. So if you want to dismantle gender stereotypes and stuff like that, it is active every day. Also dismantling racism and all of that stuff, right?
Exactly.
Everything,
it's a verb. It's a verb. It's an action every single day. And I followed you, Lost on Purpose. Thank you so much. And I think that's what's important, right? It's not like, hey, there's got to be this perfect model of what a family is. Cause that's not reality, right? That doesn't exist. It's just having open communication. And I find like, especially as a second grade teacher, when I'm fascinated by boys who are like 7, 8, 9, like they're just at that age where they're pushing boundaries. They're like, oh, I can lie and manipulate. I would love to try that on you. Right. And it's just about saying, hey, I'm going to treat you like we're friends. Let's have open, honest conversations. Like you tell me what you think. I'll tell you what I think. Like it's that when you have an open line of communication with your kid, right? That's what it's about. And one of my best friends who's a lawyer, she's a true gentle parenter, which I don't know how she has the patience for. But I mean, that's what it is. She has her kids, they'll just be like, I didn't consent to you touching me before. Like hugs it. She's not a boy mom in a toxic way, but she parents 2 boys who are very cognizant of who they want to grow up to be and, to be cognizant of women in the world and their effect on women in the world. And it's fascinating to watch, but it can feel overwhelming, but I think that's what it is as a parent, is just saying, you're not going to tell me something that's wrong, right? You're allowed to communicate with me, and then I'm just going to communicate back, right? And if that line of communication is open, you can kind of head off the toxic manosphere content that they are imbibing. Because then they can see it as such, right? If you've had these conversations, then they can say, oh, I was watching this content. Or you can say like, oh, look at that manosphere video. What do you think about that? Is that right? Is that wrong? Like, how do you feel? Hey, Liz.
Hey, how's it going?
Hanging in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. So I kind of have a unique perspective on therapy in another country, and the situation of being in the country I'm in is also kind of crazy. I'm American, but I've lived in Spain for 14 years, and Spain had a fascist dictatorship, starting the same time as World War II. They had a little mustache man named Franco, and that dictatorship lasted till 1975. So it was quite recent when it ended. And my therapist is from a region of Spain, which suffered the most under the dictatorship because they have their own language, which was repressed. And actually, there's a famous village where that language originated, that was bombed by the German Schmatzis in an experiment pre-World War II. This was during the Spanish Civil War. And Franco wanted to
Galician?
see...
What? Galician? What are you talking? What language are we talking about?
Basque Country.
Yeah. Oh,
País Basco.
I almost said a slur. I don't know how else to refer. I understand what you're talking about. Yeah, like people don't understand, but one of the people that were rounded up by Mustache Man were, I'm trying to think of another way to say that. What do they call the Rumneys? Is another way to say it, but like that. GYPSY, like
Yeah.
Basques were considered that, but there's, Irish people were considered, travelers. That's what they call them. That's what they call the
travelers.
indigenous
Yeah.
people in Ireland. But yeah, so anyways, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. So yeah.
Romney is
Franco
unique
wanted-
to Eastern. I just want to say Romney, when we talk about the Romney people, that's Eastern Europe though. It's not the Basque people in Spain. That's separate.
Yeah, they are different people, although we do have a lot of Romani people in Spain, and they were also very much persecuted during the Civil War and posterior in the dictatorship. So Franco decided to hire some Schmatzis, because he was friends with Hitler, to bomb this village where the Basque language originated, to see how fast they could annihilate a village, basically. So this was a pretty serious fascist dictator. And so my therapist is from this region, right? So, after the dictator died and they transitioned into a constitutional monarchy, there were specific regions, the Basque Country, Catalonia, where Barcelona is, that kind of received extra rights or extra privileges for being the areas that were targeted for having their own individual languages that weren't Spanish.
They're indigenous, They're indigenous regions, yeah. Is there a question though? I don't want to cut you off. I just want to make like, is this, where are we going?
No, it's not a question. It's just kind of a more educational curiosity kind of thing. Because that region also, they had a terrorist group, that continued fighting to get extra rights and privileges. So that region in Spain is now the richest in Spain. And she's from there. And so I feel like in therapy, with me bringing in like my trauma of what's happening to my family and friends. And I also have a social security pension because I have ALS. So I don't know if that will continue. So a lot of things are affecting me personally. And I feel like I'm bringing generational trauma onto her that she's never dealt with because she's never had to really think about it. So it's just kind of interesting to watch. Not interesting. I get sad, I guess, to watch her like struggle with that of like, holy crap, that's what happened to my family. What's happening to your family happened to my family, So I just thought it was an interesting perspective, like cross-culturally. And I wish in the United States they actually taught about the Spanish dictatorship, which they don't. And I mean, I studied IB, International Baccalaureate, and even in that,
Was in the International Baccalaureate program.
Yeah. And even there, I didn't have any education about the dictatorship. And it's like, if everyone had known about that and had learned about it, because it's like World War II happened, and it seemed like a short period of time relatively that dictator lasted in Germany relatively. But when you have a dictatorship that lasts 36 years and like coming out of that, it's a whole different ballgame. And I feel very frustrated that they don't teach that in the United States, thinking of like, if people had known, would things be different?
And I'll just say this because I have a degree in history. We don't teach accurate American history in the United States. We're busy covering up our own G-sides and our own shame. So, of course, we're definitely never going to teach about other authoritarian dictatorships and how we contributed to them. Oh, yeah, Pan's Labyrinth is a good one. Thank you, Toodle. No, thank you so much. And again, if anyone has questions to ask Dr. Danny, like around the topics we're discussing, you are more than welcome to request. I appreciate you sharing, and I agree. I wish history was taught in a more comprehensive way, but we should probably start with American history and our own sins.
Very true. Very true. Well, thanks for having me up.
Thanks so much. Okay. Thank you guys so much. Keep tapping the screen, sharing the live. I had a professor that used to call that a bunny trail. What? I don't know what you're saying, Gums. I was just reading it. Let's see. How long have we been live? Danny, how much free time do you have? If anyone has any questions or comments relative to what we're talking about around, gentle parenting. Oh, I get what you're saying. Yeah. Like a bunny trail, like ski. I get it now. That makes perfect sense. I just got it. I didn't get it. I always thought you were talking about like the hair on your belly.
That's the happy trail.
Yeah, but we do have time for a couple more questions if anyone would like to ask questions or talk. But yeah, I am very passionate about history. We are not teaching any history to children under 18 in this country, period. The history we do teach is delusional. Like, it's not even based in fact. Like, we're teaching children we won World War II. Like, tell that to the Eastern Front where World War II is run. Like, so, I mean, history is basically this like delusional patriotic exercise where you learn like American exceptionalism, which is the disease of capitalism. Yeah, it's quite toxic, and we can't even take responsibility for our own issues. And now, like we know, in places like Florida, in AP Black history is being removed. In Oklahoma, like, that woman was just saying she's terrified for her sons because they're learning the 2020 election was stolen. I mean, this is the reality. That's how important curriculum is. We need to stop saying we need to protect children in history. I know. Exactly. That is what they do say. Like, oh, children shouldn't be hearing this. What? Hearing about slavery? Why? Like, I mean, that's why Germany, you're not even allowed to say the word, schmotzi. Like, because they are trying to take seriously and take accountability for their history.
That was the little puppy. For anyone that spied the puppy, that was the little one that is more like a cat. And he wanted to be in my lap for about 10 seconds, which is about his limit. And then he jumps right off.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Nice. I'm waving and you can't see me.
I know. I always do that.
It's just crazy. I am so happy to be here, Felice. You are just like Rachel Maddow to me is like the Walter Cronkite of cable, and you're like the Rachel Maddow of TikTok.
I don't even deserve you to say that, but
oh yeah,
that's
you do.
So nice.
And Danielle, you're fabulous. I liked everything you said. When you brought up the history and the way it's taught, in my brain, I thought about all those little hand printed turkeys and the little hats, and they teach such a sweet story about this coming together, and it just flashed through my brain because I think of it like, no, how would you feel if somebody just ran over you and just ran over you and took your food and made you sick and did all this stuff, and you're supposed to respect these people. That is nuts to me. I wish it's even like, I don't know if I can mention the Palestinians. I've always, since I was a kid, had this idea that I thought it was crazy that they went and they just said, this is no longer your country. It belongs to the other people now. How would, just because they don't have an official army and a uniform, they're what's the word? Terrorist isn't the word. I can't remember the word, but it's insane. I just wish that would stop. It's crazy what they're teaching people. And the gentle parenting, if you're lucky, if you get out of all the authoritarian upbringing where everything was slammed at you, and you were, people who had to live like that, people who are able to do gentle parenting, wow, that's a gift. Because I see a lot of it where it is not gentle. It is yell and scream, and then you expect a kid not to yell and scream back. It's crazy. So,
any thoughts on gentle parenting, Danny? I followed you, Kelly. It's nice to meet you.
Thank you.
I think that what Kelly is saying is really accurate, right? Like, and I tell parents that often, like, you are modeling stuff for your kids. And also consider who you are as a human. We can't expect stuff of our kids that we can't do ourselves. So like, if occasionally I kind of lose my shit and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so fucking frustrated, right? And I like have a small like outburst of like, ugh. And then I have to like regulate myself, right? If your kid has like a bit of an outburst because they're frustrated with homework or something like that, attune to that child. Like, let them have a moment, be like, hey, I hear you, you're frustrated. Let's take a moment to regroup, right? Which is what I do as an adult. As an adult, I will be like, I'm very frustrated right now. I'm going to go to my room and I am going to collect myself and regroup, right? Like, that is modeling good behavior. But a lot of times parents get upset with their kids for stuff that they can't even expect of themselves. So like, if your kid had a really hard day, or they're like they just had a day at school, right? And it's the end of the school year right now. So like, our kids are getting tired. They're getting like, I don't want to do this anymore, right? Or just if your kid had a really hard day, like maybe they were bullied, maybe they had a test. If they don't have the emotional capacity to do certain things, or they need to come home and they need a second to like just chill and disconnect, you need that too when you come home from work sometimes. So don't expect things of your kids that you don't expect of yourself. If you know you need relaxed, detached time before you like jump into home, your kid might need relaxed, detached time before they jump into homework, right? So like, just know they're little humans who are learning how to human. And if I'm being reactive rather than responsive, like that's usually my thing, right? Am I reacting or am I responding? If I'm reacting, I need to take a minute, right? And I will say that. I'll be like, ooh, this is a lot for me right now. I'm going to take a minute. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to respond to you. But right now, this is very upsetting for me and I need to take a minute. That's also modeling for your kid that that's okay too, right? Like, you don't have to engage in anything right now. Or like, if you get activated, if your kid gets activated or upset, it's modeling to them that they can be like, I need to go to my room and take a minute right now. And then someone said, it's okay to apologize. Please apologize to your kids. That is something I never got as a child. It's something
Amen.
Felice never got as a child.
God.
Apologize to your kids. Do not expect your kids to apologize to you if you cannot model apologizing to them. If you cannot model accountability as a parent, do not expect your kids to give you accountability back. So like, as a parent, if I will, one of my things is I will yell, right? Like that's one of the ways I know that I'm like being reactive is like if my voice raises, and I will come back and I will be like, hey, I'm really sorry for yelling. That's not okay. And that's not how we communicate in this household. I was reacting and I felt very activated. What you said made me anxious. It made whatever, right? Like I'm going to give them the emotion. I am not putting my emotions on my child as their thing to solve, right? That's not what's happening. I am recognizing the emotions that I have. And I'll be like, that, that's not for you to worry about. If I get upset, that's for me to worry about. I control my behavior. So I took a second and I walked away. And when I walked away and thought about it, I was like, that's not what we value in our family. That's not how we communicate. So I'm sorry I raised my voice. And I would like to try that again with you if that's okay. And you know what? Sometimes your kid's going to be like, no, I'm upset right now. Okay, that's fine. I can understand how my behavior upset you. I'm here to talk when you're ready. Because I do that to my partner sometimes, right? Sometimes my partner comes back and is like, hey, I'm sorry. Not in a space to hear you right now. I love you. I'm pissed. Not in a space to hear you right now. Right? And that's okay.
I think, don't, just to add on, and I'm sorry, we're with you in 1 second. I think just to piggyback off that, it's right. And it comes with like what type of person. Like I'm both, right? I'm anxious avoidant. I'm the worst type. So like it's when I was a kid, right? I would live in fear. Like I always say this is why I have these PTSD reactions when I get THREATSs on TikTok. Cause these were promises, right? Like when your dad gets home in 5 hours, something horrible is going to happen to you. And I would sit there and have to think about it, knowing for sure, like this was not a threat. This was a promise that my life was going to be over, right? Like I was going to feel pain on a level I couldn't as a child deal with. And so I think like, I became anxious and avoidant. Like it was like if someone wouldn't resolve something immediately, I would become anxious and frantic, right? And almost need them to, and not respecting what someone else needs. Maybe they're an avoidant. Maybe they need space. They have to calm down. But I would live in such fear from my childhood of like, if I can't resolve this right now, like, she's going to tell my dad and something bad, really bad is going to happen. I have to solve this problem right now. I have to solve this problem right now, or I'm going to lose love. I'm going to be in trouble. Right. But it's important to recognize, I like to say, when you're dragging your past into the present. And like, if I have one goal, and I think I don't have biological children, but I'm a teacher, and it's taught like managing other people's children, right? Children are just a reflection of you. It's not even that they're listening to what you say. It's that they're watching what you do and they mirror it, right? When I teach second grade and a kid says the N-word, or a kid is being a bigot, or I'm not like, oh, this kid's a bad kid. It's this kid. I'm just like, oh, this kid's mirroring some behavior that they saw at home, right? Yeah. They're just little mimickers. They're just saying, this is what I learned and I'm testing it out in life. And so I think, yeah, just being cognizant of what they need and also of who you are, that kid is mirroring in every situation. And they're saying, I'm watching my parent. This is how they're getting through life. So I'm going to try that out.
Yeah. Why do I yell? Because my dad's a hell of a yeller, right? Like I yell for a reason.
Hi, ready, Bean. Sorry, it's hard for me to read. Beaneth.
Perfect. Yes. Hi. Thank you so much for having this conversation. You got it. And it's Gaelic Irish. So that was perfect.
Love that. I love Gaelic Irish names like Saoirse.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Grania. It's very cool. The weirdest names on the planet for sure.
Beautiful.
So I did have a question because I am on the struggle bus with my 12-year-old daughter. I kind of don't know where to draw the line between empathizing with her and like kind of when she is rude or, kind of walks all over me. I'm trying not to be reactive, but it seems like I'm gentle parenting her into becoming an asshole. Like I'll meet her at the door and be like, hi, how are you? How was your day? And she'll just kind of shove past me and go to her room. So now I'm a little scared that I've gone too far gentle parenting and not holding her accountable for bad behavior. So that's where I'm kind of, but I think she's also an angry, she's depressed, and I think she takes that out in anger. So I don't know how to, break through to her.
So we're talking about puberty, which is a hell of a ride. So some of it is like, I hate to say this, but some of it is that age, right? And that's not to say that the behavior, you just let the behavior go. That's to say like, sometimes I tell myself, and this is something really, I'll be like, I'll look at a child, right? Like insert child here, depending on the age, right? I'll look at one of the kids and be like, wow, you are really acting like a 12-year-old right now. Not to them, in my head, because this isn't an insult to the child, right? In my head, I will be like, you are really acting like a 12-year-old right now. And that's a reminder to me that like some of this is developmentally appropriate, that like pushing away of the parents. Now, what you said is like, I don't love the behavior. So focus on the behavior. Be like, hey, so that giving that example, right? Hey, I can understand if you come home from school and you don't want to engage in talking right now, but it's not okay to just push past somebody or to totally ignore somebody. Communication, right? If you don't want to talk, just notice me, recognize the fact that I have spoken to you. That's kindness. So like in my house, we're like, we value kindness in this family. We value respect. Respect does not mean respect my authority over you. Respect means respect my humanity. See me as a human. I am a human trying to connect with you and engage with you because I love you and I care about you. It is okay if in that moment you don't want to do that, but please recognize me. It hurts my feelings and it's not kind when you just push past me and ignore me and go to your room. So it's okay to say, I don't want to talk right now. It's okay to say, I just want to be in my room. It's okay to express a need, but it's not okay to be unkind, right? So I focus on the behavior that I don't like. And then I address the behavior that I don't like. And then I'm always going back to like our agreements on family values, right? We agree that in this family, we are respectful to each other as humans, which also brings about any sexism or misogyny that your boys start to prevent. Like if they start to say stuff, ooh, we are respectful to each other as people in this household. And that doesn't sound like respect, right? So it's that kind of stuff. Like in this family, we value kindness. We value being respectful of one another. And that behavior is not very kind. So it's okay for you to have a need to go and be by yourself. And like, sometimes I explore that need. Like, where's that need coming from? Are you just overwhelmed? Have you been at school all day and you've had people coming at you, just want to be alone and listen to music in your room for an hour? That's totally okay. But that interaction, that's not hitting the mark, kiddo.
Nice. Thank you so much. And I've just one more question because I'm really stuck on this and we're struggling with this too. So I've noticed that she's starting to like cut her legs. And I've tried to get her.
I'm one of those.
Yeah, it's self-hurting, right?
Well, here's the great news. She's probably not going to unalive someone else. she's a self-harmer. I'm deeply into this. I'm still in therapy. When it gets worse, I'm in therapy twice a week for it, like I am now. Like,
how can I help her? I'm lost.
Well, and Danny can speak. I just want to speak to my experience when I do it, right? Like, I felt like I had no outlet, and when I would do it, it was like the entire weight of the world was pressing down on me. Like, I couldn't stand back up because the weight of the entire world was pressing down on me. And then when I would do that, it was like all of a sudden I could breathe again. Like that's how I can describe it. So it's almost like a loss of control I was feeling. And then in a way I was punishing myself, but also taking back control and things would feel lighter. Like it seems like a solution to a problem. That's how I can describe it. But yeah, Danny's the professional.
So it is a solution to a problem, right? The reason that people do it is because it does work. And so the first thing I'm going to say is obviously like she might need to talk to a therapist, right? To like have that in your brain that like she might need to see a professional, not because, and the other thing is like a lot of times with parents, self-harm does not equal I want to unalive. It does not equal I'm trying to unalive myself, right? So a professional can kind of evaluate like where that is. Also, you know your child, right? So what's happening is your nervous system is getting overwhelmed and overstimulated. The emotions feel like too much. It is too much. It is heightened. You feel like you're going to just explode. And you're like, I can't handle this. I can't do this. Well, what happens when you cut in some way? It kind of completes that stress response cycle, right? It kind of brings you down. Most people will say like, after I do some kind of self-harm, I immediately am like, That's because your nervous system is responding to that. You found an outlet. That is a coping mechanism. It's a maladaptive coping mechanism. We want to replace it with a different coping mechanism. So I always non-judgmentally explore that with the child. Cutting on the legs is usually like, I'm trying to hide it, or particularly for young girls, they don't want scars, right? They don't want stuff that's visible. So if you cut on the legs, I can hide that with my clothes, and then I don't look unpretty, right? Or I won't have scars that people can immediately see in like a skirt or something like that. So it's both hiding and it can tend to be like a beauty thing, but there's some emotional dysregulation happening. There are some emotions that feel past her coping abilities, right? And that's what's happening is her coping skills are here. Her emotional distress is here. So whatever emotional distress she's experiencing, it is beyond her ability to cope in an adaptive way. So she has found a coping mechanism that works for her. It's about replacing it. So it's about recognizing what those emotions are, exploring with your child, like, hey, and again, non-judgmental. I've noticed that you're doing this. And I'm not judging you about that. I get it. Sometimes we get emotionally overwhelmed. And then I'm always asking the kiddo, like, do you not want to be here anymore? And sometimes kids will be like, yeah, sometimes I don't want to be here anymore. I explore that as well. Do you literally mean you don't want to be here anymore? Or do you mean I don't want to feel this way anymore? Most of the time they mean I don't want to feel this way anymore. What are you feeling? What's going on there? Right? What is happening leading up to this? Right? I'm not judging you. I just want to talk about it. So before you cut, what's going on? What are you feeling? Is there a pattern to this? Is there a time you're most likely to do this? Right? And so just kind of discussing that. And then often we can replace that with another heavy body sensation. So like holding ice cubes, right? If you hold on to ice cubes really heavily, that's getting you out of your brain and into your body. Well, that's what cutting's doing. So if we can get you out of your brain and into your body, what does that look like for you? Does that look like an ice pack on your neck? Can we take an ice pack and press that into your neck? Can you hold ice cubes and like squeeze them until they start melting? Can you do that? And then like after a while, you're going to go, oh my God, this is really fucking cold. Right?
I do it with my face in a bowl of ice water. It's called, because what you're doing is you're invoking the mammalian dive reflex, right? Like it's shocking you out of whatever that dark place is you can't seem to get out of. And I'm just giving advice because if you have a 12-year-old girl, just understand, I'm sure some 12-year-old girls have a better experience. The hardest time in my life was when I was 12 years old. It was a nightmare. Like she's going through a nightmare.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
just
11 to 14.
be super sensitive to that. This very well might be the biggest struggle of her entire life. It was for me, like truly.
And sometimes like the ice, like Felice was saying, I live in Florida. It is never this cold, but I used to live in Nebraska. So there were times that I would be like, go outside and stand in the snow with shoes on. We're not trying to get frostbite here, but like put shoes on, don't put a sweater on, go stand in the snow. After like 15 seconds, your body starts shivering and you're like, ugh. You can't be that engaged in your emotions when your body is like, what the fuck is going on here? Right? So that's what's going on is they found an outlet through their physical body to reduce the stress of the emotions. If you can replace it with a different physical outlet for their body that is not harmful, that's a great coping skill. And that's a coping skill they can use for the rest of their lives.
Thank
So
you.
good.
That's so helpful. I appreciate you guys so much.
And I can say for me, like if I had known this when I was younger, like people say it's extreme and you don't have to do it to the extreme, but like maybe you can start it as a family. Like I find walking, I started reading studies that, hey, I could take an antidepressant, but if you walk 15 to 20 minutes a day, that's, the same thing as an antidepressant. And now I take it to the extreme, maybe, but like I find like I know I can maintain balance if I walk 5 miles a day. And and, or, you know, like whatever. But I mean, like even on a smaller scale, just starting those traditions of saying, hey, there's exactly, Danny described them as maladaptive behaviors that you can learn. That could be drinking. That could be a lot of things that help you get through trauma, right? But there's also these really cool positive behaviors, which could be ice baths. It could be a sauna. It could be a 20-minute walk with your family and learning how to reset that way. Like there's so many cool things. And I mean this genuinely, and I'm just discovering them as an adult, that you can do. And as my therapist says, get out of your head and into your body, right? Somatic healing. Like we're all in our heads being, especially self-harmers, being super hard on ourselves. And you've got to turn that off and get into your body. And there's millions of ways to do that, and just find the one she likes and maybe do it together even. But just saying like, it's okay to not be okay. And like, I'm just here holding space for you. Like I'm here.
Thank you both. I appreciate you so, so, so much.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and tell your daughter it would be nice to meet her someday. She's amazing.
I will.
And she'll
Love
survive.
her.
It seems like the end of the, trust me, I never thought I would make it to 13. She could do it. Trust me, it gets so much effing better. If only someone had told me. Hi, boxer mom. No, so cute. I was just talking this morning about how I love boxers. Lee, thank you so much for the $5 on Venmo. Can you ask Danny for the name of the website again? Oh yeah, what is it? The
Open Path Collective, I think, is what we're thinking of.
I need to get my daughter into therapy. Yeah. It's having an unbiased third party for your daughter to talk to. I just can't express. I was desperate for it when I was a child. It could make all the difference. Open Path Collective.
Open Path Collective. Okay. I'm going to write that down.
Dr. Mom.
Hi. Thank you. Thanks for having me up, Felice. And for, would you prefer like Dr. Danny, Dr. Kramer?
Danny is fine. Just Danny is fine.
Okay. Okay. All right. Before that name, do you follow Dr. Keisha online?
I believe I do. I'd have to check on which social, because sometimes I follow people on Instagram, but not on TikTok, and vice versa. So I think I'm following on both, but I'm unsure.
Or Dr. Sharon or Dr. Les. They put together, it's called the Medical Collective. It's a podcast. And anyway, there's a lot of different, they're trying to give a voice to all kinds of different fields. I was wondering, I thought it would be maybe cool if you could hook up with her and maybe work in doing on her show, maybe.
It's not a bad idea. I'll definitely reach out and see. I think I follow her on Instagram, but not TikTok.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, I'll definitely reach out.
Yeah. My questions, if it's okay, I have two separately issues. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. First one. My husband got Parkinson's disease from a chemical at work, right? And he's considered, in what they call the oh my gosh, low age, whatever. Yeah, young age Parkinson's. Gosh, can't think of the word. But something that it does to your brain is it doesn't allow you to handle stress very well. And sometimes when it doesn't happen all the time, but every so often he has like an absolute panic attack, and it could just be over nothing. And it's hard. Like I want to be able to help him. And so like try to do some breathing, that kind of stuff. But sometimes when he's in that, it's like he almost can't even catch his breath. I don't know if y'all have any advice.
Well, that's when I talked about that, how I dunk my head in a bucket of ice water. That's what it is for. It's for a panic attack when you are, out of control and trying to come back down from it. Like that's the mammalian dive reflex. If you can activate it, there's different ways to activate it. It helps you calm down. I also just see water as healing to me. Like I have the thing where I always tell people when I start crying on my lives, like, I'll just lay in the bottom of the shower after this. Like sometimes it's freezing cold water, sometimes it's warmer after I calm down. But yeah, like laying in the bottom of the shower, and like my dad will just say, count the drops, you know? I just try to focus on counting the water drops, right? Like there's different methods to come out of a panic attack and get back into your body, but sometimes it takes shock.
It's extremely difficult to watch your husband go through just the different things that Parkinson's itself, can bring about. And in some cases too, I don't take it personally. I mean, we're high school sweethearts. We've been, we'll be 27 years this year. And so I don't take it personal. But sometimes he, what's the right way to put it? I don't know. Maybe it's just not his usual self.
He's not nice to you.
It's not that he's mean or anything like that, to be quite honest. He's just not talkative for a little bit. And that's unusual for us. And so, but I know, but also this stupid chemical and what it did to the brain, he also has tinnitus in both his ears, and sometimes it is like a jackhammer going off, and that's a lot of when he gets quiet, which I get, right? But I'm just saying, I'm just trying to find something I can to help him. Like, I don't know how to help him.
I do think therapy can be helpful. So anxiety is what we call a non-motor symptom of PD, Parkinson's disease. And it's particularly something, I think is relatively interesting is that it is particularly common in early onset PD. There are brain changes also that go on with Parkinson's disease. So that's something to note, right? And to know is that there are changes, like literally changes happening in the brain. So anxiety onset with Parkinson's disease, and particularly early onset Parkinson's disease, tends to be complex, right? There's like genetic factors for you guys. There's environmental factors that came into play. There's also brain change factors. And then there's factors of anxiety that just come from like dealing with a chronic illness and changes, right? So looking for a therapist that is a disability therapist or a therapist that specializes in chronic illness. There are therapists out there that's particularly specialized in coping with chronic illness changes. That can be really helpful because they particularly work on like anxiety related to managing and coping with chronic illness. So that's a really good start. Tinnitus in the ear, I want to say that there's medications that can help with that, but I'm not sure because Parkinson's is a neurological and not a neurologist, right? But there are medications that can help with tinnitus. And I don't know which ones we usually use for Parkinson's disease or if he's on any medication. But like, tinnitus is also a chronic thing, right? And it's like fucking annoying.
Oh, yeah. I mean, sometimes sometimes when he gets when he gets so stressed out or like anxiety, his work, for example, how companies are, right? They decide, hey, let's go spend $1 million on some computer software that none of us really want to do, right? Well, his is very complex because he's like designing substations. And for every one of those, this new entry could be over 50,000 entries per substation, right? And I've seen him get physically sick. Like it can happen like a couple times a week, and I just have to really try to, depending on what's going on, it's not home related for us; it's work related, really. And so, I mean, he violently gets sick, and I have to give him some of that stuff you put under your tongue for nausea.
No, I have that. Zofran's the best.
Yeah, okay.
Praise
I
the
didn't
Lord.
know if I could see the word.
Oh yeah,
No.
I think Zofran might be better. But yeah, no, I take Zofran like twice a day. No, yeah, I totally the best. Sublingual is the best. That's the good stuff. I just want to say though, like I would just suggest like for me, when I'm going into fight or flight or about to have panic attacks and things, like I have in my tool belt like a whole arsenal of ways like to handle that. I don't know if do you know those really, some are kind of expensive, some are cheaper now, those really like aggressive massage guns that are for like deep tissue. I like, if you get one of those, I find those help me like come down from a panic attack. Just putting it even on my hand or an arm, like, you know what I mean? Like that's, you have to figure out a way to just reset the brain, right? And that for different people, it's different things, right? Like I have a lot of soft blankets. Like maybe when he starts to feel bad, he needs to be wrapped in a blanket and feel snug, right? Like feel contained and safe. That's something for me. Like, I mean, and it's not one thing, let's say. Just, I would suggest having a bunch of different things, you know, that can kind of calm him. And, you know, because yeah, it probably will keep happening and it's the loss of control. But like, that's what I have like about 20 different things. If one's not working, then I move on to the next. But those massage guns, you'll be surprised. Like, and in weird places where pressure points are, like you can't help but not feel bad when one of those is like just in the center of my hand, even.
It's like breaking the cycle of the pattern, I guess, you know, that you're in at that moment. And I had no idea what I was doing. I just randomly did this one day. He was kind of having one of those, and I had like an ice cold bottle of water, and I put it on his neck. And it actually helped. And something I found that does help for whatever reason for him is if I kind of can get him a little calm and then kind of just rub his neck and his shoulders a little bit, and it kind of brings him. And that's another thing too. It's
You're a
scary
saint.
to him.
Can I just say you're a saint. You're doing an amazing job, and it feels overwhelming. And it is like the thing about things like Parkinson's is it's not just a problem for the person who experiences it, right? It's like their loved ones experience it as well. So I just want to commend you, and you're amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so sweet. And I have lupus and Sjogren's and other stuff. And
There you go. You know.
Right? My other thing, because I know y'all probably going to get going, I appreciate your advice on these things because I want to be able to help him. I don't want him to suffer, you know? And he doesn't deserve that either. My other thing is totally different. It's about the orange guy. It's in the White House right now. My dad, we don't have long. And I am so, I don't know. I just have like a whole other kind of hate right now in my heart. My dad's not going to be here much longer. He's unaliving from Agent Orange. And I am so pissed that this is what he has to see on his way out. So I'm trying to figure out how I can work through that because I'm like just mad, you know, because this isn't what he would want. Oh, he is so upset about it, and to think he's leaving the world, you know, with that. Sorry to get emotional with that. Just gets me.
It is emotional, and I think that's kind of like what we were saying earlier. I think a lot of people are working through a lot of grief, right? Like yours is literal grief at your dad, like passing and being towards the end of his life. But there's also a grief that comes from like, this is what he has to experience at the end of his life. Like, this is what he will know at the end of his life, right? And people are looking at that going like, I never thought I would have to do this or live through this or have to, like, I always knew that I would have to worry about a parent dying, but I didn't know I would have to worry about this on top of that, right? So just recognizing the grief, recognizing that that is valid and that that grief is real, like the grief that your dad has to live through this in his last days. And I really encourage people to use yes and thinking, right? Like allow two things to exist at once because yes and thinking will, and I know it sounds so simple, but that will save you in times like these. Like, yes, this is a clusterfuck. Yes, what is happening in the country is awful. And also, I'm going to grab every single moment that I can with my dad. I'm going to find those little moments of joy. I'm going to create beautiful, safe spaces for us to connect as father and daughter. Like I'm because, and we kind of, Felice and I talked about this previously, but like pleasure and hope and having that connection, this is not shit that they get to take from us. And that alone, like engaging in that love is an act of resistance. Refusing to let them take that pleasure from you, we just got a restriction. Did you get it, Felice?
I've never seen. I don't. I mean, yeah, but do you want to drop and come back really quick? I don't. I mean, I don't care. That's ridiculous.
I have to go in like 5 minutes anyway because I have patients.
I'll make it
so let's just
fast.
wrap it. We don't need to drop.
Like yesterday, we found out he possibly has a Kennedy ulcer, and I didn't know what that means, but apparently that means you don't have very long. And so he's disappointed because he didn't raise us girls like this. He's disappointed in white tea people and the harm that they keep causing to this country.
I think what Danny said is amazing, though. Like, you don't let the last moments of you have with your father, right, be lost. Like, you create these moments of joy, of enjoyment, of remembering the good times, right? Like, that's what you preserve. Like, that's what you're going to remember after. Your dad sounds
That's
like
exactly
a great
what
person.
we've been. That's exactly what we've been doing. You know what I mean? Like, we don't talk politics, any junk like that. Like, we're just trying to make it all fun, and we have great memories. I mean, we're very family oriented, and that's where I am right now. I'm going to be here. So,
well, tell your dad that we thank him for his service, and
thank you. He didn't believe in the Vietnam War, but
he went anyways, but
he had to. Yeah, he didn't. You know, he didn't have.
I can't imagine being exposed to Agent Orange and then like having to watch what's going on now. I can imagine the emotions and the helplessness. Like, yeah.
Yeah, he got like the Bronze Star, but he still won't accept it. Like, he's not gotten the
dad
actual.
sounds like a great person. I just
because he said those people had families
all of our
too.
dads that we needed.
Yeah, and this will be and this recording will be on YouTube. A Girl Has No Name, just like my name here. If you want to show him this, maybe it'll make him feel better and tell him we appreciate him and everything he's done. And like, he's raised a fighter, and there are more fighters who are going to keep fighting.
Yeah, you're right. Thank y'all so much for giving me.
I followed you. You're amazing. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
God. I promised myself I wouldn't cry. I saw Dr. Keisha's in the comments. Dr. Keisha Davis. Do you want to follow her, Danny? So
yeah, absolutely.
Because then you guys can connect and do amazing I followed you, Dr. Keisha. Some glowing recommendations.
Yeah, I love it.
Do you want Joanna's here? Do you want to do? Hey, Joanna, and then Danny needs to leave in a couple of minutes. Hey, Dr. Keisha, followed you.
Hey y'all, hey Felice, hey Dr. Danny. Love you both of y'all already know. All the great people in the comments, I'm a little disappointed in you people because we should have been at 400K and we know Dr. Danny has to go in a little bit. So can we please get the live up to 400K? I need y'all to tap the same way that y'all have been yapping in the comments. Greatly appreciate it. And since I know you have to go soon, Dr. Danny, I'm going to keep it real short and sweet. What general advice do you have for getting older people to actually get into some type of therapy? My relatives are Black, my aunt and my mom. My aunt has all kinds of trauma that she refuses to face. She was married to like a 50-year-old man at 15. She started having kids at 14. She never had a childhood, and she's 75 now, and she's always angry. She also has issues with her thyroid, and I've heard irritability is a symptom of that. But she's like, what do I need to go talk to somebody about it for? I'll be fine. I'm fine. I'm just old. It's like, ma'am, you're traumatized.
So there's so many, and sometimes I end up saying this to my clients really often. I'm like, look, at some point you end up in therapy to deal with those family members that refuse to go to therapy. Like, they need to be paying your therapy bill. So it is hard, like, especially older family members that were taught bad things about therapy or had this stigma about therapy, or were taught that, like, you just suck it the fuck up and go on, right? So you can't make anyone do what they don't want to do, right? Like, we have to release that we don't have control over that. And also thinking, right? So, like, we can release that we don't have control. Yes, and you don't have control over other people. That is not your labor or your job. And also, we love these people and we can see them hurting and we can see how this could be helpful. So sometimes if they won't go to therapy, like I'll give them a book. Like I can't, I mean, I guess I have this one now, right? So like sometimes if people won't go to therapy, I'll be like, hey, I saw this book, I read it. I think that this would be really helpful to you. Like I saw some of you in this, or like this really connected with me and it's some of stuff that we've talked about. Like I think this would be helpful. I think of the media that they will engage with. I think of the media that they're willing to engage with. Like my mom is not going to read a book like this. She's not. She won't. She'll read a book that's like a story, but she won't read a book like this. So I might find a book that's a fiction book that talks about that kind of stuff and be like, this book is amazing and it's got like a great story and blah, blah, blah. And it's got a lot of like themes in it that are like feminist or whatever. So then we'll talk about the book and I'll be like, what'd you think of the book? Well, what'd you think of this part? Like, I thought this part. So it just gets them thinking, right? Cause like my mom's one of those people that I'm like, she's like, I'm fine. I'm like, girl, you're not. Like, you're not fine. You were raised in a horribly traumatic childhood. So like, it's so funny that our older family members will tell us the most horrific stories and we're like, that's fucking trauma. And you're just saying this at the dinner table like it's normal? Like, so.
Oh my God. That's every day. Like with my dad. He's like, yeah, we couldn't swim. Black people couldn't swim in the public pools. So yeah, we had the most fun swimming in canals, Felice. It was amazing. I'm like, this story is horrific. And then we run from the cops who were trying to beat us to death. And I'm like, thanks, Dad. I'm going to go cry in the bottom of the shower.
Yeah, like this is normal childhood. So I give them books or books, podcasts, whatever media they are willing to engage in. Like my mom will read books. Some old, like I have some aunts in my family that will listen to podcasts and stuff. What will they do? What is a yes for them? Like if therapy's a no, we can't force people into therapy. And also it's probably not going to work that much if they're not willing to engage in it, right? What will they engage with? What's a yes? What is accessible to them right now? And sometimes if I get people reading about like something that they can connect with in their childhood and people talking about how like, hey, this is how that might impact you now as an adult, then maybe they can start seeing like, wow, that wasn't okay. That wasn't normal. Or like my parents doing that was normalized, but that wasn't normal. It's getting a yes from them. Like, where are they willing to give you a yes? Or even sometimes they just bring up like, yeah, I was listening to this podcast the other day about like authoritarian fathers, and it reminded me of like some of the stuff you were saying about grandpa. Now I'm talking about my own mother. But like some of the stuff you were saying about grandpa and like this and this and like how that's like really harmful to kids. And then my mom would be like, oh yeah, your grandfather this and this and this and all this abusive stuff. And then I'm like, God, that must have been really hard to like deal with and manage. And but so you just engage in conversations where they will engage and like again exploring with curiosity. Like the more they say this stuff out loud, and the more like sometimes I'll have those reactions on purpose so they can see like how weird that like, oh yeah, grandpa used to blah blah blah. Oh my God, mom. Like
It's
what
not normal. Yeah.
that's not normal.
And can I
Right, like
also say, like, for me, like, my therapist, who was one of them, who's great, like, we would walk around, right? Or shoot baskets because, like, whatever your aunt's, like, most comfortable position is, right? Like, I find if I'm moving, I can be more honest, right? Like, if I'm sitting in a chair, it's harder. So get her in a space where she's comfortable. Like, for me, I can be more open if I'm walking and talking for some reason. And I think that's something, like, men experience a lot as well. Like, so just wherever she's more comfortable, like cook with her, you know, if she likes to be in the kitchen, do some of that and start a conversation.
yeah,
Well, I
knitting
guess
and
I'll have to
crocheting.
start gardening now because, like, we were watching The Color, like, we went as a family to watch The Color Purple when they did the adaptation in theaters. And she was like, yeah, that's kind of how I grew up, you know. Mr. Jumper, which is crazy that you called your husband Mr. Jumper. That should have been the first red flag, right? Mr. Jumper was around that age. It was the same age difference. And all of us younger kids were like, ma'am, that's not, no, it was me. He was always fine to me. Listen, I don't care how fine an older man is. If he's 50 and you're 14, that's not okay.
Yeah, exactly. Being put in a cage. If you're a bird and you get put in a gold cage, you're still in a cage.
Preach. Thank you. We're going to do this. Maybe we'll do it next week this time. I don't know, but we're going to figure out a time to keep doing this because I think it's very clear this is needed. And Dr. Keisha, if you're still here, it's so nice to meet you. And maybe we could have 2 therapists the next time. It would be amazing to help double the help would be amazing. Oh my God. So thank you. I followed you. Hopefully you followed us back and we'll reach out and like maybe we can do a collaboration and that would be even more amazing. Like women, we all need to stick together and communicate. So we'll work that out. We'll make the connections and hopefully we can collaborate. Anyways, your amazing brain. I'm sure I've had 100 people in here saying that you're brilliant. So I think that will be enough. If you would like to, anyways, obviously don't do anything you don't want to do, but we'd love to have you. So we'll reach out and see if we can connect and see what we can do. But thank you, Danny, for being here. I know you're busy and you have a life. And Joanna, thank you so much for being the most amazing mod in the world. Yeah. And hopefully we'll plan something soon and I'll let you guys know in the Discord. Thank you guys all for being here. I think we need to address mental health more because it's only been 3.5 months and it's getting dark. It's okay. Yeah. We're all going to be okay. We'll community, reaching out to each other, putting yourself in other people's shoes through empathy. That's the way back to each other. So I shall see you guys. Oh, one quick thing. Tomorrow I'm going to be live. I'll be debating with Pickles instead of the People's Receipts. I think I'll let you guys know in the Discord. Danny, last words?
No, thanks for being here, everyone. I super appreciate it. One more time, that website everyone was asking about is called Open Path Collective. That's where you can get low cost therapy if you can afford it, because I know we had a lot of people ask, but thanks so much for having me.